It all kicks off with the grand final battle between humanity's 5 heroes and the fearsome demon emperor. In the midst of the clash, a massive amount of energy is unleashed, destroying everything around them. And with one last explosion, the great battle finally reaches its climax and its end. The monster was defeated, but to achieve this, humanity's 5 heroes had to pay a very heavy price. After the dust settles, we see the impeccable knight and the iron fortress supporting the sky archer. Elsewhere, our protagonist tries to heal the Sage of Holy Light, who is gravely injured. But one of his comrades warns him that the enemy's final blow wounded her, and she can't be healed. He yells for everyone to shut up and keeps trying to save her, without success. His friend then asks him to stop, telling him not to try and save her anymore because she has already accepted her fate. With a smile on her face, she says she's already satisfied with this ending as her body glows with light. Even in victory, they remember their promise to all return together. But now, this was the end. Just then, our MC hears a familiar voice and wonders if it's the voice of the Demon Emperor. The voice then confirms it's his, and that those are his final words for their magnificent battle. Suddenly, the Dark King's blood envelops his friends, and they realize they've been tricked by the monster. The MC's body begins to transform, and he realizes the enemy's true ability was assimilation. The Demon Emperor then reveals that he prefers to call his unique ability evolution. Meanwhile, the assimilation continues, and our protagonist's body starts to be consumed by darkness. The voice explains that those who defeated him are worthy of becoming his new vessel for his grand masterpiece. He focuses on our hero, saying that he is the strongest human vessel of all. Seeing his comrade being possessed, one of the warriors screams his name, trying to break free. He then says he'd rather fall by his friend's hand than become a tool for the enemy. The protagonist's mind is torn as a voice begs him to abandon this idea and not take out his ally. But the blonde knight yells for him to hurry up, as he can no longer resist the assimilation. The inner voice keeps pleading with him not to let the tragedy of one brother taking down another happen. Blonde asks why his sword is trembling and if his friend can't bring himself to strike him. With a grim look, the protagonist seems to brace himself for what must be done. The monster's voice says that resistance is futile and that his right side has already been completely assimilated. With this, the knight understands that it wasn't weakness, and a small smile appears on his face. And in a swift motion, the sword's blade cuts through the air, heading towards its target. To everyone's surprise, the sword pierces through the protagonist's friend's chest. With a smile, the blonde says that only someone as ruthless and deadly as him is worthy of that ability. The MC calls him brother, and his ability awakens, causing a mark to appear on his face. Immediately after, he pulls the sword from his friend's body as the assimilation retreats from his arm. The archer, watching from a distance, screams her boss's name in despair. She and the knight tell him not to let the sacrifice be in vain and to do whatever it takes. With a look full of determination and hatred, our protagonist seems to have made his final decision. He then takes the lives of his other 2 companions, and the number 2 appears on his face. With that, a third mark appears, indicating that he has absorbed the power of all his allies. Screaming in pain and rage, the protagonist unleashes an enormous amount of golden energy. The enemy's voice says that 3 lives traded for power were only enough to free his hand. But our hero replies that to solve the final problem, a single hand is more than enough. He then raises his sword towards his own neck, surprising the monster's consciousness. At this, the entity furiously screams for him to stop this madness immediately. His demonic hand grabs the blade, and the voice warns him not to test its patience any further. And with a bit of force, the sword shatters into several pieces before our young man's eyes. With the destruction of the holy sword Sula, the monster believes it has won the battle once and for all. The entity then boosts, saying that no attack in this world can harm its invincible shell. But suddenly, the sound of something breaking echoes through the place, leaving the creature confused. Our hero then asks if the demon really thought he couldn't destroy himself. And with a shout, he strikes his own chest, piercing his body with his free hand. Surprised by the young man's action, the monster screams his name as a massive explosion occurs. After the dust settles, we see a scene of destruction with a trail of dark energy in the sky. The enemy's consciousness admits it underestimated him, and the protagonist wonders if this is his end. Kneeling and wounded, the warrior laments that he couldn't save anyone, and that not all demons were annihilated. With a sad and defeated look, our young man seems to accept his lonely fate. Just then, a giant mysterious figure appears and says what happened is a pity. With that, the scene changes, and we see that 5 years have passed since the great final battle. In a dark forest, someone comments that it's been 5 years since their boss left them. Another voice calls him an idiot and asks if he doesn't know what they're doing tonight. A monster says all he knows is that he had to bring 4 human girls and a demon to this location. He explains that this year's memorial will ensure the new generation never forgets their creator's sacrifice. With that, the monster announces the beginning of the ritual and says he'll start with the 4 human offerings. In a swift move, he attacks the girls. Seeing this, the other demons advance to feast on what's left of the offerings. He then turns and says that now he will spill demon blood to honor their former emperor. Then we see that the final offering is our protagonist, who is hanging and badly wounded. Slowly, he opens his eyes and wonders confusedly where he is and how he ended up in this place. He doesn't understand how he's alive, as he remembered perishing in the battle. But the insect monster kicks him and yells for the trash not to move, leaving him stunned. He continues, saying the prisoner is the weakest demon and doesn't even deserve a name. Shocked, our young man wonders if he's become a demon and notices that his eyes are now green. The insect then says that being a sacrifice here is the greatest honor he could ever have in his life. With that said, the executioner raises his blade, preparing to deliver the final blow to our hero. With a swift movement, the monster's weapon descends at high speed towards the young man. But to the green creature's surprise, its blade doesn't hit the target, and something unexpected happens. The insect monster becomes furious with the young man and yells at him to stop squirming because he ruined everything. Our guy then breaks free from the vines that held him, falling to the ground and escaping the attack. The green creature is shocked by the scene and wonders if the prisoner did that on purpose. With an intimidating glare, the MC asks if the half-breed demon can't recognize him. Seeing those eyes, the insect starts to sweat bullets and stammers, unable to say a single word. A memory flashes in its mind, and it screams the protagonist's name in complete panic. He then remembers an old battle at sea, where he served in the demon army. Back then, he was just a rookie and was sent to row with the other monsters on the ship. One of his superiors told him to put his back into it, because the four lords were watching everything. In the year 312, the Lin clan used the power of the sea gods and launched a surprise attack. The assault was so fast that only a single human arrived in time to stop the enormous fleet. Alone on a small raft, that man prepared to face an entire army of demons. That was the protagonist, Glon, the demon slayer of Belu City, one of humanity's strongest heroes. Meanwhile, on the other side, the demon king was preparing to give the attack command to his troops. But the only thing the insect remembers from that day was that all of his allies perished. The creature remembers that all its comrades were taken out in that terrible confrontation at sea. It recalls that with the exception of Lord Xiu, all the other demons met their end that day. Amidst the destruction, several demon kings were annihilated, and only one of them survived. Even covered in blood, the hero's gaze showed a determination, as if he were gathering his aura. In the midst of the rain and lightning, the warrior stood firm and imposing before his enemies. Back in the present, the insect monster's face shows pure terror as it faces our young man. He then explains that with the right angle, it's easy to destroy the weak spot of crustacean demons. Our guy realizes he has been resurrected, but his ability has been reset to level 1. Seeing this, the other demons shout to get him and charge all at once to attack. With just a few moves, he annihilates 9 demons, and a Roman numeral appears on his body. He says the minions were weak, and that he only got a little stronger with his ability. Another monster watching from a distance is terrified by the strength shown by the young man. Seeing it has no chance, the bizarre creature tries to flee from that place as fast as possible. But the protagonist uses the insect's blade and pins the centipede to the ground, preventing its escape. As the creature screams in pain, our young man approaches and grabs one of its legs with his hand. After the fight, he goes to the girls' bodies and covers them with a cloth to give them some dignity. Even in a new body and with a new life, his determination as a hero of humanity hasn't changed. He then tries to use a healing spell to test his powers, and a green light appears in his hand. But suddenly, 3 snakes burst from his arm, and he wonders why his hand turned out like this. His hand transforms into a reptilian claw, and he screams in denial, unable to believe what he's seeing. He looks at the body of one of the demons on the ground, and the harsh reality begins to weigh on his mind. Desperate, the young man falls to his knees as spikes begin to sprout from his back. He finally understands that he wasn't resurrected, but reincarnated into the body of a demon. With his hand on his face, he can't accept that he has become part of this shameful race he hates so much. He remembers how he despised this inferior race, and now he is one of them. With a cry of rage, he says that the only value demons have is being taken out by him. After his outburst, he calms down a bit, but the expression on his face remains grim. The taste in his mouth is bitter, and he spits on the ground in disgust with himself and his new form. The centipede threatens him, saying it will torment him and make him scream in pain like a human. He ignores the threats and says he doesn't know why he ended up like this, but he understands the consequences. The monster wonders why the coward from before is so different but decides to scare him some more. But before it could do anything, our hero charges forward and annihilates the centipede with a single blow. With the insect's blade in hand, he mercilessly finishes off the last monster in that place. Even as a demon, he decides he will continue his old mission of annihilating all of them. With a terrifying smile, he says he has nothing to complain about because now he can hunt them from the inside. He remembers hearing that 5 years have passed since he perished along with the demon emperor. Now, he decides it's best to find a place to stay and then investigate what happened more thoroughly. As he climbs, he spots the skull of a giant troll and recognizes the place where he is. He realizes the demons have built a fortress there and finds it very convenient for them. The fortress was built on the skeleton of the round mountain troll, an old enemy of his. Continuing on his way, he finds the cave where he once stayed and confirms his memories are correct. The place seems safe and free of demons, so he decides to use it as a temporary hideout. To warm up and rest a bit, our young hero decides to light a small campfire. Sitting near the fire, he reflects on everything that has happened and how his life has changed drastically. Even with a new body, his eyes still carry the same determination as before his previous life ended. Near the fire, he begins to carve a small wooden doll to pass the time. At this, a memory of his old friends comes to his mind, and he remembers the good times. He recalls a day when one of his friends had to improvise and gave him a leaf skirt. His companions couldn't hold it together and burst out laughing at his new look. Our hero was obviously not at all happy with the joke and was clearly not amused. Back in the present, a strong wave of nostalgia hits him, and a melancholic look takes over his face. He then finishes carving the small wooden statue of one of his former companions. Carefully, he places the figure next to others he had made before. In total, he made 5 small statues, one for each of his friends who were gone. Looking at the figures, he remembers that time and how different things were. Another memory surfaces, and he laments, thinking he could have done better. With a serious expression, he then picks up one of the small wooden statues and eats it. Immediately after, he throws the rest of the dolls into the fire to burn and turn to ash. The memories of his friends fade as the fire slowly consumes the wood. Since he's a demon now, he decides to use it to his advantage and destroy them from the inside. Suddenly, a sharp headache hits him, and he starts receiving the memories of the demon's body. He sees that the former owner was a weak, snake-blooded demon who was always getting beaten up by others. In the memories, the demon worked as a servant on Round Mountain, and our hero wonders if he was a farmer. Another memory shows a demon teacher giving a lesson on world affairs to other monsters. One of the students complains about the class, and we see that the body's former owner was being used as a footstool for a demon. He remembers that demons were tools of war created by the bloodthirsty emperor, but in just 5 years they developed a civilization and settled in these lands. With all this new information, our hero finally leaves the cave to explore the world outside. Looking at the horizon, he regrets not being strong enough to solve everything in the past. So he swears that in this life, he will become stronger than ever to annihilate all demons. Using the demon's memories, he finds a map that shows the location of Training Ground 2. That was Round Mountain's Training Ground number 2, a place full of demon recruits. A red instructor yells at the recruits, saying he doesn't want to repeat the lesson about the soulless continent. Observing the scene, our young man finally understands the current situation and what has happened in recent years. After the Emperor's demise, the demons led by Xiu continue the war against the humans. The instructor announces that the topic of the class is talent marks and cleans the map with a recruit. He explains that the marks are innate abilities and that every demon is born with one, unlike humans. To use the ability, both humans and demons need to consume an internal power. The strength of this power is shown by symbols ranging from 1 to 6 marks, with the first being the weakest. The red demon boasts about being a 2-mark warrior and unleashes his yellow aura. Our hero realizes that he also only has 1 mark now and that he needs to test his new abilities. The instructor continues, saying that the second mark is a milestone as it awakens the user's ultimate technique. Suddenly, the other demons make way for someone important to pass through the crowd. A blonde demon shoves our guy and arrogantly tells him to get out of the way. That was the camp's genius recruit, a powerful demon with several knight helmets as trophies. He says he doesn't need a footstool and asks who let this useless servant in here. The instructor tells the genius to shut up and says that the practical training is about to begin. He explains that in combat, the power and type of the mark don't completely decide the victory. Pulling a tarp, he reveals a giant creature and says that tactics and adaptation are also vital. With an excited smile, the blonde demon says that finally, something fun is going to happen. The instructor reveals that the creature was made by the former emperor and that now, only this one remains. He says it's a very strong howling demon and that the beast's body has only 1 weak spot. Our hero watches everything from a distance and seems to find the whole situation quite boring. He thinks there's nothing useful for him here and decides it's time to leave this place. He regrets not being able to annihilate the demons to level up and decides not to draw attention. Suddenly, the giant creature's eye glows an intense red, and it prepares to attack. Beast then easily breaks free from its chains and charges furiously at the recruits. The red instructor tries to hold the monster back with the chain and yells for the creature to stay put. He boasts that even though the beast has 3 marks, its weak spot is in his hands. But to the red demon's surprise, the creature lets out a terrifying and mocking smile. The beast then says that the new generation of demons is pathetic, leaving the instructor in shock. It reveals that it's been faking it for weeks to complete its master's mission, and now it will annihilate them all. The monster's body begins to crack, and dark energy is released from within. In the blink of an eye, the creature lunges forward and annihilates the demon instructor with a single blow. All the other recruits, including the blonde genius, are completely terrified by the scene. Launches a devastating attack against the roots, wiping out several demons at once. The blonde genius is shocked by the monster's strength and decides to run so he doesn't have to use his secret weapon. As he tries to escape, he bumps into our protagonist, who intentionally blocks his path. Lying on the ground, the arrogant demon yells furiously, asking why the bastard is getting in his way. With a calm look, our young man just wipes some blood off his armor, ignoring the commotion. Amidst the chaos, the giant creature notices that one of the recruits stayed behind and stares at him intently. With a smile, the beast taunts him, asking if he can escape as it takes out more demons. Seeing he has no way out, the blonde prepares to use his secret weapon as a last resort. The monster then launches a powerful and dark attack directly at our hero. Enormous dark claws advance at high speed, ready to crush the young demon. But instead of running, the protagonist faces the attack head-on as his eyes glow intensely. The beast is surprised and wonders what's happening and where that strange aura is coming from. It doesn't understand why the weakling doesn't fear it and wonders if he knows its true weakness. But it dismisses the idea, as its 9 relatives perished years ago, and a rookie would have never seen them. With a powerful stomp on the ground, our young man prepares to show the monster what true power is. The beast convinces itself that it's impossible, and that this is all just an act from the young demon. Standing amidst the destruction, our hero faces the monster with an overwhelming presence. With a dark glare, he warns that if the creature takes one more step, it will meet its end. The creature decides to get serious, preparing to show off its authority. With that, unleashes a primal power and lunges forward with a devastating attack against our guy. But our hero remains standing without a single scratch, while the blonde demon is down for the count behind him. The monster makes a swift move. Fleeing at top speed, the monster thinks the fight is too risky and decides it's better to just book it. Everyone is shocked to see the massive demon run away, and the blonde genius can't believe what he just saw. Then, our hero offers a hand to the demon on the ground to help him up. The blonde demon looks at him with an expression of total confusion, not understanding what's happening. He thinks the MC is trying to get close and says that he's a two-seal genius while the other is just a servant. With a disdainful look, the arrogant genius says he won't fall for our hero's silly little trick. At that moment, our guy simply rips off a piece of the blonde demon's clothes, leaving him stunned. He then uses the piece of fabric to wipe the blood from his hand with an eerie calm. The blondie becomes absolutely furious at his attitude and calls him a filthy farmer. Soon, the other recruits approach and ask how he managed to scare off the howling demon. One of them demands an answer, and our hero explains that he read the creature can't see stationary objects. The demons buy the lie, and one of them says the book was written by the demon slayer Garen. With a sly grin, our hero reveals he was lying, and that howling demons actually have excellent vision. The blonde demon gets annoyed and accuses the newbie of being arrogant just because he's read a few books. One of the henchmen asks if their boss is okay, and he plays it off, saying he's just tired. Then, the genius orders his 5 followers to track the MC and take him out in the most humiliating way possible. The 5 demons accept the mission with malicious grins, ready to hunt down our hero. They follow him to a secluded spot and say they've followed him long enough and it's time to make their move. With that, the 5 goons emerge from the fog, and one of them says no one will interfere with their fight. The monsters spread out in the fog, surrounding our protagonist, so he has no way to escape. They comment that his venom is weak and that a bite will, at most, just sting a little. So, the demons decide to split up to find him in the middle of all that smoke. Suddenly, one of the goons screams in pain, saying the scoundrel's snake bit his stomach. His body then succumbs to the venom, and he just explodes into a million pieces. The green spreads through the area and begins to affect the other monsters as well. With that, 2 demons scream in desperation, saying there's poison in the smoke and that their eyes are burning. Our young man's silhouette appears in the middle of the poisonous smoke as the demon screams in agony. He says he's going to use these 5 nasty things to test the applications of his talent seal. His ancient serpent bloodline gives him thermal vision, and he explains how he can now see in the dark. Furthermore, by concentrating power in his arms, he can create snakes to attack his enemies. The demons wonder what happened to their friends, and our MC reflects on his newfound tactical flexibility. Suddenly, the leader of the demons lets out a powerful howl, preparing for combat. At that moment, our hero finally emerges from the smoke. The red demon taunts him, saying he's nothing without the fog, while his brother threatens him. The monster charges at high speed, ready to deliver a devastating blow. He readies his blade arm for a powerful attack that slices through the air. The demon continues his move with a furious expression, ready to finish our guy off once and for all. Watching the scene, the other monster is impressed by the power displayed by his brother. But our protagonist remains calm, analyzing the enemy's every move with his eyes. The monster's blow approaches rapidly, seeming impossible to dodge or defend against. To everyone's surprise, the MC dodges the attack and lands a brutal hit on the demon. The surviving demon is completely paralyzed with fear by what just happened. Seeing he has no chance, the creature surrenders and begs for his life, blaming the blondie for the orders. But our protagonist doesn't seem the least bit convinced by his lame excuse. Desperate, the monster offers to lead him to the blondie's secret cave, which must hold precious treasures. The MC thinks he can use the treasures to evolve and decides it's worth checking out. So, the two walk through a forest, and the monster announces they're almost there. Reaching the edge of a cliff, the creature points to a cave hidden behind the waterfall. But before the monster realizes it, our hero grabs him from behind, sending the creature into a panic. The MC uses him as a human shield and throws him straight into an arrow trap. With the path clear, our young man thanks the creature for disarming the trap for him. The cave is a deep pit filled with arrows, with a small chest waiting at the end. Meanwhile, at the mountain fortress, a demon prepares to give a report. He informs his leader that a howling demon was scared off by a simple snake servant. The territory's leader, named Bone Crusher, hears the report and finds it all very interesting. Back in the cave, our hero picks up the chest and wonders why it's the only box there. Inside the box, he finds a small pouch, but a voice yells at him to drop the item. Suddenly, the blonde genius appears in a swift attack and manages to snatch the pouch from our young man's hands. Furious, the arrogant demon yells at him, asking how he dares to touch his precious things. The furious demon throws a kick in our young man's direction. Our hero dodges the blondie's attack, who then falls to the ground, crying out that his leg was injured in the attack. The blonde genius is shocked and wonders why he's so different from before. He realizes he can't fight head-on and needs to retreat so his leg can heal. So he decides to fall back and flies away at high speed to escape the fight. We see the blondie fleeing at top speed. Standing under the waterfall, our young man notes that it was another avian-type demon. Alone in the cave, he seems thoughtful, reflecting on what just happened there. In that moment, a dark memory of other avian demons suddenly surfaces in his mind. We see our hero's feet as he decides he must go after the blondie. He then runs at high speed through the tunnel towards the blonde demon. With a look of rage, he prepares to eliminate the demon. Shouting, our hero says that avian demons deserve to be wiped out the most. He catches up to the blonde demon in mid-air and attacks him with a powerful punch. With the impact, the two begin to plummet at high speed toward the lake. Even in free fall, our young man lands a devastating punch right in the enemy's face. The blondie then uses his claws to land a brutal blow on the MC. But he ends up kicking him, sending him flying into the water. Our hero then lands gently on the lake, as if it were nothing. The blondie taunts him, saying he was unlucky to fall into the bile lake. Suddenly, something begins to move under the water's surface, getting closer. With that, several strange creatures emerge from the bottom of the lake and surround our young man. The creatures grab him from all sides, but he doesn't seem the least bit worried. The blondie explains that those bugs will devour him until there's nothing left. He reveals that the lake was formed by the bile of a very powerful demon clan. Being pulled under, he bites one of the creatures with all his might. With this, he begins to absorb the creature's energy to increase his own power. He breaks free from the creatures with a blast of power, leaving everything around him destroyed. The blondie is surprised by his strength but quickly regains his composure. He says that even if the protagonist is strong, he'll never be able to finish off all the insects. Then our young man launches an attack with his hand, and several energy snakes surge toward the blondie. The energy snakes shoot out of the water and attack the demon in the air at high speed. He dodges and slices through the snakes with his wings, mocking the attack speed. He continues to taunt, saying that at this speed, our hero would be lucky to haul manure. The demon continues to dodge and cut the endlessly appearing energy snakes, saying that our young man's snakes are too slow and are, at best, good for tilling the soil. The blondie warns that he'll be slowly worn down to nothing and calls him a filthy farmer. Suddenly, all the insects in the lake gather together, forming a giant, weird ball. The energy snakes fuse with the ball of insects, creating a bizarre creature. The bizarre creature soars into the sky at high speed, surprising the blonde demon. With a determined look, our hero prepares his final attack to end the fight. The creature of snakes and insects charges at high speed toward the blonde demon. The bizarre creature hits the demon head on with a swift attack, shocked by the speed and wonders how the attack got so fast all of a sudden. With that, only the remains of the annihilated insects are left in the lake. He says the insects only got him to the second seal, but that's enough to deal with the bird. Chilling smile, he threatens the blondie, saying that in the next blink he'll slice open his skull. The demon calls him crazy for spouting such nonsense and grabs a bow to defend himself. Then our young man advances at an incredible speed, leaving the enemy completely surprised. The blondie yells not to be underestimated and charges his arrow with a powerful purple energy. He reveals that it is Lord Shu's magic arrow and that fate has saved it for this very moment. He fires the arrow, unleashing a blast of energy toward our hero. The blondie seems confident that his final attack will hit its mark. But to his surprise, our protagonist simply stops the arrow with his bare hand. Energy serpents emerge from his body, and the blondie doesn't understand what's happening. The serpents then envelop our young man and the magic arrow in a completely bizarre scene. They form a cocoon around him and fall back into the water. Slowly, our young man's hand emerges from the water, surrounded by a mysterious purple energy. The blondie watches from the shore, confused, wondering if his deadly arrow managed to finish him. Suddenly, a pink-haired demon appears and runs over worriedly, asking if her brother is okay. She says she followed the trail of feathers, and he reassures her, saying he just dealt with a petty thief. He then looks at the pouch in his hand. With that, the demon reveals that the treasure is to treat her eyes and that he will protect it with his life. In the water, the cocoon of snakes absorbs the arrow, and the blondie remembers the weapon didn't have that power. Our young man is confused and doesn't understand why his body is transforming in such a way. His eye glows as one of the serpents approaches him, as if they were connected. Then, a very bright white light takes over everything, and a silhouette appears in the middle of the glow. His eye transforms, gaining an infinity symbol and a completely new power. The symbol reveals itself as a serpent in the shape of a figure 8, indicating a complete evolution. With a new white-haired look, he finally understands what happened to his body. The energy of the purple arrow is completely absorbed by his new form. He realizes his awakening was triggered by the arrow and calls himself a greedy serpent. With the ancient bloodline, he awakens an impressive power of annihilation. This power is called a serpent's molt and shows its full destructive potential. An explosion of purple and white energy consumes our young man's body in an epic transformation. On the shore, the two demons think he's sunk and that the fight is finally over. The blondie wipes the blood from his face and says they can now relax. But suddenly, the sky darkens and lightning begins to strike, changing the entire atmosphere. A heavy rain starts to fall, and the two siblings look up at the sky, completely confused. Dark purple lightning bolts slash across the sky, creating a terrifying scene. The blondie recognizes it as black thunder and is completely stunned. The lake water begins to bubble and glow with an intense purple light. A huge explosion of energy erupts from the bottom of the lake, illuminating everything around. The shockwave from the explosion nearly knocks over the two demons as they shield themselves. The blondie says something jumped out from within the lightning, and his sister asks what it is and where it is. She points to the middle of the lake with a look of fear on her face. In the middle of the lake, a statue emerges with our hero on top of it, in a new form and with new power. The blonde demon can't believe what he's seeing and is in total shock. Our hero appears in berserk mode, now with white hair and an imposing aura. The two siblings watch his new form with fear and prepare for the worst. Our young man reveals his new form, called Fierce Thunder. He admits his mistake to be deceived before. But now everything will be different. The blondie doesn't accept defeat and charges forward furiously, yelling at him not to get cocky. He flies at high speed toward our hero, but the MC launches a purple attack. The attack hits the demon head on, causing him to fall toward the lake. He screams in fury for being tricked once again by our young man. The attack destroys the blondie's wing, leaving him vulnerable and unable to fly. The protagonist says the blondie's power level isn't enough to test his new abilities. With one last energy attack, he hurls the demon forcefully into the water. His sister watches everything in despair and screams her brother's name in a panic. She runs towards the lake in the rain, trying to find her missing brother. The blondie sinks into the water and laments, saying that if only he were stronger, things would be different. He knows that after he's gone, the protagonist certainly won't spare his sister. With a roar of fury, he unleashes a blast of energy to save himself. Our young man watches the scene with a smirk, not looking surprised. The blondie reveals his new form, called Dove's Feather Suit, with a yellow aura. His sister is moved to see that he has finally awakened his authority. With tears in her eyes, she says she won't let him fight alone anymore. She then uses her dominant demonic eye to summon a giant, shadowy beast. The two siblings shout together, preparing a combined attack. That they launch an attack, called the Falling Sky Arrow, toward our hero. But our young man prepares to fight back with all his newly awakened power. He concentrates his purple energy and launches a devastating beam against their attack. The two attacks collide, creating an explosion of yellow and purple energy. Our hero charges through the middle of the explosion, ready to end the fight once and for all. He lands a powerful punch on the blondie, who has no chance to defend himself. The impact of the blow is so strong that the blondie is thrown far away. The summoned beast tries to devour our hero, but he doesn't let it get the best of him. He turns in mid-air and launches a purple energy attack at the creature. With a viper's bite, he destroys the beast in a single blow. After the explosion, our young man lands on the water. The blondie sees this as his chance to attack while he's distracted. With a sneak attack, he uses the insect bodies as cover and advances. But our hero defends against the attack with a purple energy barrier. The blondie's sister uses her reinforcement gaze to strengthen his attack. The beast she summoned also prepares to attack with full force. She unleashes a woven cloud storm, a powerful and devastating attack. The blondie thinks the protagonist can't block the attack and advances confidently. But our young man unleashes a blast of energy and says not to be underestimated. He uses the Abyss Storm, an attack that deprives the enemy of their senses. With that, the blondie falls into the water, defeated, and his sister runs to help him. He hands the pouch to her and tells her to run, but she refuses to abandon him. He desperately hands her the pouch of eyes, begging her to flee. Our young man approaches, and the blondie begs for the return of the bag with the eyes. In the bag, several human eyes are revealed, and the blondie continues to plead. Our hero explains that his sister needs to eat fresh human eyes to keep from going blind. The two siblings hug and beg for mercy, saying they don't want the eyes anymore. The MC turns away and says he's going to ask a question as the rain stops. He asks if the people who had their eyes plucked out also begged for mercy. The two siblings are left speechless by his question and don't know what to say. With a cold gaze, he demands a yes or no answer, no beating around the bush. They look at each other sadly, and the sister says she's forgotten. She looks down with a blank expression, as if she doesn't care about the victims. Our hero reflects that demons haven't changed at all, even with their new civilization. Sitting on the shore, he thinks they've just gone from hurting for pleasure to hurting for profit. He bites an apple and concludes that they treat life as something worthless. With his new form, he says his biggest gain was the fierce thunder form. He explains that this form consumes a ton of energy, so he can't use it whenever he wants. A demon calls his boss over to see the bodies and says their demise had nothing to do with the weather. He reveals that the siblings' heads were ripped off by a lightning strike in a quick and violent method. The boss Bone Crusher arrives and says it looks like an unwanted guest has invaded her territory. Meanwhile, someone is hiding in the forest, watching the scene from afar. The leader warns that she will personally investigate any mysterious ends of new talents. With a hoe on his shoulder, our young man walks through the forest as if he were a simple farmer. Bone Crusher sees him and approaches him with a suspicious look. She asks who he is and what he's doing there, and he replies that he's looking for wild berries. The boss then remembers him as the farm slave who scared off the howling demon. She shoves him aside, saying she has more important things to deal with right now. The demon steps on him and threatens him, telling him to find some good berries for her pie. He falls to the ground under her foot, looking completely helpless and submissive. She leans in close with a seductive smile and threatens him. With a serious look, our hero thinks about his brief encounter with the commander and her lackeys. He realizes that quick showdown was enough to test the power of her seal. So now he considers himself a speed-type demon, giving him an advantage against power types. He laments not being able to take out the fourth seal Demonus, as his ability would have advanced a ton. But the problem isn't just the type advantage, it's the massive gap in raw power between them. Even so, the MC can't suppress the intense urge to hunt her down and finish the job. With a glint in his eye, he decides the hunt for power, and revenge starts now. Meanwhile, the demon commander is reading a book, investigating the recent string of passings. She analyzes the info and discovers the marks on the bodies weren't made by electricity. As she continues her research, she looks for an ability called Mountain of Corpses. However, she rules out another possibility and seems to be hitting a dead end with this mystery. From the top of a cliff, our hero decides he needs to get stronger for a surprise attack. Just then, a small demon spots two monsters making a shady deal with a cart. The smugglers hide, and one of them says not to worry because the place is secure. The little beetle then goes to a lake and appears to get chomped by a frog. But actually, the beetle was being controlled by our hero, who used it as bait. He touches the frog and thinks he's found a secret shortcut to level up easily. With this new info, he arrives at a cave with a huge door and a guard out front. A purple monster stops him and asks to see his entry pass for the black market. Our protagonist enters the place and sees it's a black market crawling with all sorts of different demons. He moves quickly through the market, seemingly looking for something specific. He hears other demons complaining that they can't buy like they used to. A vendor tries to sell him a rare material that can make his weapons 10 times stronger. But our hero replies that he's never heard of a blacksmith who could actually forge that material. Another vendor advertises fermented hearts, and a customer complains that it's contraband. One demon grumbles about the commander having banned the sale of help 2 years ago. Hearing this, the protagonist finds this behavior fishy and suspects a conspiracy is afoot. Further ahead, a red demon announces he has workers for sale, and the crowd gets hyped. The vendor tries to calm everyone down, saying he'll sell the whole batch at a fire sale price. At that moment, our hero steps up and says he wants to buy all the prisoners. The vendor gets ticked off and asks if our guy has any money, since he looks like a total bum. Calmly, the MC offers the vicious thunder arrow as payment, leaving the vendor stunned. The demon then tells his goons to take the prisoners away so he can have a private chat. Just then, one of the blindfolded children stumbles and falls to the ground. As he falls, the little boy drops a small pouch he was clutching tightly. Desperate, the boy tries to grab the pouch back, yelling for them to wait for him. A lizard monster complains that he wanted to keep the chubby one to have some fun with by himself. The vendor asks if he's in a hurry to sell the item because he's scared of that blonde demon commander. With a sly grin on his face, the vendor seems very pleased with the negotiation. The door then closes and the two are left alone inside the room to finalize the deal. A dark purple energy explodes from inside the room, and the demon screams in agony. Several energy serpents attack the vendor, who has zero chance to defend himself. The door remains closed, but now a dark liquid starts seeping out from under it. Slowly, the door opens, and a bright light illuminates the entire dark hallway. Our hero then walks out of the room with a glowing necklace and a determined look. The door then slams shut behind him, revealing the mess he left behind. Inside, we see that our young man didn't spare anyone and took out every last demon. Meanwhile, outside, the goons are taking the prisoners to a secure location. The lizard then tells the children to keep quiet. But our hero appears out of nowhere and strikes the monster from behind with a final blow. With that, he says he's now strong enough to at least restrain a chicken. The little blonde girl is completely horrified by the scene of senseless violence. The lizard demon's body falls to the ground right next to her, splattering, well, stuff everywhere. The terrified girl calls him a demon among demons. He thinks about his passive skill, which thankfully has a low chance of activating. With the fight over, our young man stands before the two rescued children. He then returns the small cloth pouch that the little boy had dropped earlier. The boy says thanks and takes the pouch back with a smile of relief and happiness. As he guides the children out of there, the girl offers to carry the rope for him. He tosses the rope aside and says he doesn't like seeing people tied up, and that they're free. Using his powers, he heals the men's eyes, and they are incredibly grateful to finally be able to see again. He then starts healing the little boy but tells the adults to zip it because they wouldn't stop yapping and thanking him. Confused, the girl asks why he saved them since he's also a demon, and he replies, "'Cause I felt like it." The little girl is left completely speechless and stunned by her mysterious savior's blunt and simple answer. But with his eye glowing, he tells the little one to be quiet because he's busy finishing up healing the boy. Our young man then stares at the rescued humans, wondering how he should say his goodbyes once and for all. With that, an awkward silence fills the place, and the little blonde girl is left not knowing what to do. Until suddenly, a light bulb goes off above her head, and she seems to have a great idea to break the ice. So the girl turns to everyone and says she's going to tell a joke to lighten the mood a bit. She starts telling a story about a tavern that was offering a nice discount on the third drink to celebrate a festival. With a smile on her face, she continues, saying that a man asked the bartender for a glass of the second drink. At that moment, the rescued men just give her blank stares, not getting the punchline of her joke at all. The little girl then puts on an innocent face, realizing her attempt at humor didn't quite land. But suddenly, the sound of a muffled laugh echoes through the cave, surprising everyone there. One of the men points to our hero, and the little girl is overjoyed that someone understood her joke. However, out of nowhere, a serpent of dark energy emerges from our protagonist's feet and lunges forward. The creature then wraps itself around the little girl, who screams in terror, not understanding what's happening. The serpent strikes the other people, who also scream in pain and panic from the attack. One of the men falls to the ground in shock and cries out for their savior, unable to believe he's been betrayed like this. Sitting on a rock, our young man looks down at them and says they were very naive to trust him. The man says that the demonic race always hides a venomous heart and that they should never be trusted. With a smirk, our hero says this is what happens when you trust him and that they should remember this lesson. After that, all the rescued humans fall to the ground, seemingly lifeless after the poison's attack. He then approaches the little girl and asks why she's resisting the poison he unleashed. But crying, the girl says he didn't want to finish them off and only meant to knock them unconscious. Our young man remains silent for a moment, a serious expression on his face. The girl says he just wanted to teach them not to trust demons, and he asks what makes her so sure. She then yells that it's because he's a good demon, and that's why she trusts him completely. At that moment, the little boy wakes up and asks his friend what she wants to do now. With her eyes shining, she says she wants to follow him, but the MC replies that he doesn't need any dead weight. She then introduces herself as Sula, a blacksmith, and promises she won't get in his way at all. Our hero recognizes the name and asks if she happens to be the granddaughter of a man named Alexius. Surprised, Sula confirms it and asks how he knows her grandfather, leaving the MC lost in thought. He explains that they are old acquaintances, that he even held her in his arms when she was just a baby. With that, a memory of an old forge comes to his mind, revealing a bit more about his past. In the memories, we see Alexius, Sula's grandfather, saying that he doesn't forge swords for those who harm their own or the innocent. With a serious and suspicious gaze, he stares intensely at our hero from that time. The blacksmith says the MC reeks of blood and that his seal of talent can still smell it, even after all these years. He then tells our young man to leave, but the MC reveals that Sister Dia sent him to find him. He then says he wants the steel sword the blacksmith is forging, and the old man asks if he's with this sister. Our hero then just confirms with a brief nod. Alexius is silent for a moment, a serious expression on his face as he sizes up the situation. He then agrees to forge the sword, saying he'll repay a favor he owed her with this weapon. Old man Alexius shows a small statue he received from the sister and says he plans to use it as the handguard for the blade. Our young man asks when he can pick up the sword, and Alexius tells him to be patient, as it will take a few days. He then mentions he needs to call a scholar to bless the birth of his grandchild, who is on the way. The scene changes, and we see our young man kneeling in the middle of a cold, desolate, snow-covered landscape. In the background, we see a completely destroyed house and a sword stuck in the ground. Alexius then appears holding a baby, and our hero approaches to ask where his sword is. The blacksmith points to the weapon stuck in the snow and tells the warrior to go get it himself. Alexius reveals that the name on the sword is Sula, the same as his granddaughter's name. Then, with a serious look, our young man asks about the little child's parents. Alexius tells him they were gone when a horde of demons invaded and attacked their village. He explains that the creatures wiped out everything, and everyone they saw without mercy. He then asks if Sister Dai and our hero's beloved also perished at their hands. With an expression of pain, the MC confirms that yes, they're all gone because of the demon race. The blacksmith hands the baby to the warrior and laments that she never even had the chance to receive her blessing. Our young man then looks down at the little Sula in his arms with a determined gaze. He decides to give her his own blessing and wishes for her name to accompany him on his journey. Alexius asks if he should change the sword's handguard as demons approach them. He suggests that, in our hero's current state, he might not need mercy anymore. The protagonist questions the meaning of mercy as he faces the enemy army. He then reflects that healing the wounded is just a self-deceiving remedy for the sect of mercy. He prepares for battle, facing the horde of demons with his new sword in hand. Vowing that he will act before the wicked, can even raise their blades against the innocent. With his new sword, he charges against the horde of demons, promising to eliminate them all without mercy. Our hero unleashes powerful and precise strikes, and each movement of his blade leaves a trail of destruction. In the blink of an eye, he annihilates several monsters at once, showcasing his impressive speed and strength. He shows no hesitation in his eyes. His only mission is to keep fighting until no one is left standing. With his face covered in blood, he swears to stack the bodies of his enemies until they form actual mountains. For him, true mercy is annihilating them all, so that the innocent will never have to suffer again. But back in the present, young Sula says her grandpa used to tell her stories about him, but she asks why he looks like a demon now. Our hero dodges the question, saying it's a long story and that he just takes really good care of himself. Then, he turns the questions back on her. Sula crosses her arms and declares she'll only go back to her grandpa after she's forged the ultimate demon-annihilating blade. Seeing her determination, her reflection flashes in his eye as he watches her intently. So he encourages her to keep up the hard work, and she gets totally hyped, asking if he really believes in her. With a thoughtful look, the protagonist says that having a passion is a good thing, and he's even a little jealous of it. Afterward, he writes a note for the humans, introducing himself as the Vampire Knight and leaving them instructions. With that, he leaves the humans passed out on the grass so they can safely be on their way when they wake up. Upon waking, one of the men finds the note and shouts excitedly that they were saved by the legendary Vampire Knight. Following the instructions, the rescued humans get dressed and begin their long journey toward freedom. The little boy still seems to be in disbelief, asking if everything that just happened was actually real. Meanwhile, our hero returns to the cave and says he took care of a few demons. Sula then proudly shows off the simple forge she built herself, saying it was a piece of cake to put together. But she laments that the best material is in an occupied mine, so she has no way to put her real talents to use. Our protagonist hands her a rare, golden material, leaving her completely stunned. He says he grabbed the material earlier, and Sula excitedly praises him, calling him a master thief. Our hero then asks if she knows how to forge that steel, and Sula brags, saying she's one of only 3 people in the world who can. His expression turns dark when he hears that the third blacksmith is the current demon king of war, Agricola. She explains that this king is the strongest in history, and that there are only 6 weapons made from this material in the entire world. Lost in thought, he realizes he needs to get stronger as fast as possible to deal with this new threat. Sula then asks where he's going, and our hero replies that he's going to continue his hunt to get stronger. Elsewhere, a demon reports to his boss that there were no survivors at the black market, which sends her into a rage. The boss relaxes in a hot spring and orders them to hang the bodies in the square as a warning to everyone. The lackey asks how they're supposed to find the culprit, but the boss just tells him to shut up and get back to work immediately. She then threatens him, saying that if the farm slave's breakfast is subpar the next day, they won't live to see another. She sinks into the water, thinking she's really craving some high-quality sugar. Meanwhile, some demons are talking about the situation, and one of them thinks it must be bandits from other territories. Our boy overhears the conversation, and one of them mentions that the boss would notice a high-level demon unless they were disguised. Realizing the monsters are on high alert, his hand glows with a green energy as he plans his next move. Near a group of monsters, he concludes that passing himself off as a weakling is a much better way to level up. A couple of demons find the body of another one of their own, commenting that this has been happening a lot lately. Our boy hears them and reflects that he wasn't the one who took that guy out, so something weird is definitely going on. Walking through the village, he wonders if there's another predator hunting demons in this area besides him. With his sharp instincts, he suddenly stops, sensing that he's not alone. His eye glows intensely as he focuses his attention to detect the mysterious presence. He then scans the abandoned village, trying to pinpoint where that strange feeling is coming from. Just then, he glances down an alley and notices a suspicious silhouette moving in the darkness. He finds it odd that someone would be following a simple slave, and it's definitely not to learn how to farm wheat. With that, the mysterious figure steps out of the shadows, and our hero braces himself. In the blink of an eye, the cloaked figure lunges forward, throwing a powerful punch right at our boy. Soon as our boy dodges, he throws a punch back at the enemy. But the enemy's defense is so strong that our hero shatters his own hand on impact. He's blown away by the enemy's defensive power. Seems completely unfazed by our boy's punch. As the enemy stares him down, our boy quickly shatters the wooden support holding a water basin on the roof of a nearby house. The enemy sees that the water is about to fall right on top of them. Taking the opportunity, our hero rushes toward the enemy to attack. The enemy is surprised he can still attack after taking that hit. The enemy says he overestimated him and blocks our boy's attack. The protag then unleashes a purple energy from his hand, preparing for an assault. Suddenly, this energy erupts and shoots toward the surprised enemy. The force of the attack is so powerful it obliterates the ground where the enemy was standing. The explosion of purple energy spreads throughout the village, destroying everything in its path. He wonders if the enemy withstood the blow, increasing the density of the power in his body. The two then face off in the middle of the destruction, surrounded by auras of different colors. The enemy's cloak begins to dissolve, appearing as if it were made of water. The mantle then melts completely, falling to the ground and breaking apart. With that, only the tattered remnants of the cloak are left behind on the village floor. The enemy reveals herself and says she won't pursue him because she knows she can't catch him. The villainess thinks he's dangerous and wonders if she should finish him off, or, if she ever captures him, turn him into her little lapdog. Far away, our boy reflects that for now, he can only scratch her, and that he'll need a new way to defeat her for good. A curtain of smoke appears. A vision of Sula in danger flashes through his mind, making him worried. As soon as his vision clears, he calls out Sula's name. Why she didn't build a chimney. Sula realizes the heat is getting too high and runs desperately toward the forge to fix the problem. With a sweaty and focused expression, she holds the hot metal with a pair of tongs, giving it her all. Amidst the smoke, she continues her work at the forge while our hero watches her intently. Our boy asks if the sword is for him. Sula says yes, shows him the finished blade, and says she made it a good size for him, since he's still kinda weak. Back in the present, Sula is super pumped while forging the new sword for our hero, and she says it's her masterpiece. Sula tells our young man that Geelong would be proud how the sword turned out. The new, wave-patterned blade is finally revealed, glowing with an intense golden light. He then holds the new weapon and praises the girl's work, saying she did an awesome job with the forging. He then asks about the guard hilt and pommel, but the young woman says she doesn't have the right materials for those yet. Our hero then wraps a cloth around the blade and replies that, for now, this is more than enough. Looking at the newly crafted weapon, he asks if little Sula has given it a name yet. She says that since the greatsword was named Sula, this one should be called Little Sula, and he agrees. Right after, we see what the weapon will look like when it's complete, with a sinister green aura surrounding it. He says that, as expected of an angsty steel sword, his body can barely wait to absorb it like an offering. But he controls his instincts and says it's not time yet, as he needs to wait for the sword to be complete before it can evolve. At that, Sula raises her hammer full of determination and says she's going to work really hard to finish the weapon. She asks if he can use his sword technique, but he says the place isn't tall enough for that. The next morning, Sula is sleeping and drooling, completely knocked out after a long day's work. Until a delicious smell fills the air and wakes her up, as she mumbles that the aroma is amazing. With her mouth wide open, Sula stares at a huge fruit pie on the table. She asks how he knows how to make that, and he explains that he learned at the Royal Academy. We then see him placing one more fruit on top to decorate the dessert. Our hero takes the pie elsewhere, and two guards say they're going to get wine for their chief. He then enters a hall where the territory's commander is waiting for him, lounging on a sofa. Their eyes meet, and he looks dead serious while the demoness smiles mischievously. As he gets closer with the tray, the commander says it's a long platter and asks to see the goods. She then praises him for being clever and for serving himself up to her on a silver platter. The demoness repeats that he's very smart as she leans in to eat the pie. Just then, she turns and shouts down to the guards below to bring the wine immediately. In this moment of distraction, our hero attacks using his fierce thunder form. The commander is in shock, with a cut on her face, and recognizes the angsty steel sword. He threatens her, saying she won't be so lucky with his next strike. To defend herself, the chief summons a large golden shield called the Aegis of Dawn. Our young man thinks that, just as he imagined, she has a defensive talent seal and wants to test it further. The commander says a surprise of this caliber isn't to her liking and prepares for battle. Our hero then scoffs, saying that maybe he didn't put enough honey in the pie for her. With that, he charges forward with a purple energy attack that violently clashes against the golden shield. The impact of the collision generates a massive explosion that destroys everything around them. The two are locked in a power struggle, their weapons and auras clashing. The commander then smiles confidently as she prepares to counterattack. Using the tip of her shield, she launches a blow called the Twilight Strike. The demoness's attack shoots forward and hits our hero square in the face. The blow leaves a small wound on his face as he's pushed back. He then counterattacks with such force that the impact creates a shockwave. The impact hurls the demoness across the hall, while she holds her ground with her protective shield. She thinks that our hero is attacking recklessly and that his power will run out soon. Our hero realizes his sword is weaker than her shield and thinks of a new plan of attack. A burst of purple energy. He launches a lightning net from the ground as the chief watches. The commander scoffs at his attack, calling it a cheap trick, and leaps over the lightning net. He recognizes the technique she's using to protect herself, a skill developed by his old friend Faye. With this realization, he becomes furious that she stole his friend's technique and dares to compare herself to him. The demon chief doesn't understand his anger and asks why he's so ticked off about it. She then lunges forward once more with the tip of her shield, preparing a piercing blow. The strike hits our young man dead on, piercing his chest and wounding him badly. Even injured, he manages to back away as her weapon transforms into a giant spear. The commander scoffs, saying it's ridiculous for him to get distracted in the middle of trying to take her down. Suddenly, green energy serpents appear and wrap around the demon's spear, surprising her. She doesn't understand what's happening and wonders if this is just another one of his cheap tricks. Just then, the newly forged steel sword appears, glowing intensely with power. The chief is shocked and says he had a lot of nerve bringing that into their fight. With an insane look in his eyes, the protagonist says the warm-up is finally over. He then gets into position with his sword and declares that the real battle can begin now. We're told an ancient legend about how a hero faced a giant serpent to protect the three moons. The legend says that even without his spear, the hero fought with his bare hands and sacrificed himself to win. Back in the fight, the commander unleashes her golden aura, preparing for a powerful attack. But she realizes too late that she's made a fatal mistake in switching weapons. Our hero takes advantage of the opening she gave by switching from the spear to the shield and lunges forward. With a swift movement, he pierces her with his sword in a clean strike. Cold look, he seems to have gained the upper hand in the fight. However, the demoness smiles and grabs the blade in her body, saying, "Finally got you." At that, her arm transforms into a giant gauntlet called the Armed Hand of Thebius. With her new weapon, she prepares a devastating punch with immense golden energy. He tries to block the blow, but the gauntlet's force is overwhelming and pushes him back. The impact of the punch is so strong it creates a shockwave that shatters the floor around them. Our hero thinks that he needs to dodge at all costs and find a chance to heal. But instead of running, he braces himself to grab the giant gauntlet. He catches her punch, and the chief is surprised that he's attempting a joint lock. Our young man then says he's an experienced fighter, and doesn't mind grappling on the ground with her. With a series of grappling moves, he takes her to the ground and completely immobilizes her. She has him pinned and says his internal injuries must be tearing him up and that he's really tough. With a smile, the commander says it would be a shame to just end him like that. The demoness then presses her foot against our hero's face with all her strength. She then invites him to work for her, but he just glares at her with a look of pure hatred. He quickly breaks free with his sword, and the chief takes that as his answer. At that, the commander attacks him with a devastating punch from her gauntlet that lands square on him. The powerful blow from the giant gauntlet advances with crushing force against our hero. The impact of the collision creates a massive explosion that completely obliterates the castle floor. The attack is so powerful it pierces through the tower's roof and continues soaring into the sky. The energy from the blow hits the giant skull on the outside and shatters it into 1,000 pieces. The fight leaves a massive hole in the tower that goes from top to bottom, showing the destruction. She says that if it weren't for the sword, the punch would have blown him to bits. But with such severe injuries, the demoness refuses to believe he's still alive. However, amidst the wreckage, our young man uses a healing art to recover. He then lands on a floating rock and prepares for his next move. In the sky, a sphere of purple energy forms over the giant mountain skull. With his sword glowing, he prepares to use his most powerful technique. The commander recognizes the move and wonders if it's the second form of the sword technique. His technique, Phantom Thunder, strikes the skull with absurd power. Furious, the demon chief yells at him and prepares a counter attack with her gauntlet. She then meets his attack with her fist, which is glowing golden. The two powers collide in an explosion of energy. The collision is so strong it engulfs the entire fortress in a blinding light. But after the dust settles, we see that the tower was severely damaged by the impact. Inside the ruined hall, our hero emerges from the smoke and rubble. He's back in his normal form, with a calm expression and tattered clothes. His green eyes shine with unwavering determination. Emerging from the smoke, the chief says that his attack almost finished her. The demoness then reveals that in 2 years, he was the first to force her to use this technique. She reveals her innate seal, the Immortal Battle Banner, which absorbs and redirects any attack it receives. Our hero is stunned and wonders about the power of that Immortal Battle Banner. That the chief creates pink energy claws and prepares for the final blow against her opponent. The commander then charges with her new weapons, telling him to take that pride with him to the underworld. The protagonist gets confused by her technique and wonders if this has something to do with his friend Faye. The demoness then stops her attack with a dumbfounded look on her face, having no idea what he just said. Back in the present, the demon commander seems to be pondering the recent events that went down in her territory. Our MC then takes off the bandage wrapped around his neck. A little while back, there's this group of adventurers talking about the legendary hero they're supposed to meet up with. Just then, the girl in the group spots a strangely round mountain peak off in the distance. Suddenly, that so-called peak starts to shake violently and lift itself off the ground, catching everyone completely off guard. Turns out that was no mountain. It was the head of a giant monster with glowing red eyes. And just like that, the massive round mountain troll gets to its feet, revealing its gigantic body to the heroes. But instead of attacking, the monster grabs its own head and starts screaming in pain. They're all confused as the creature's head starts to get pointy. One of the warriors recognizes the attack as the legendary Heavenly Fall Sword technique. Right after, a powerful slash of energy cuts clean through the creature's head. A beam of light shoots down from the sky, completely piercing the giant creature's skull. Then, the enormous creature begins to topple over. That massive giant, looking like something straight out of an anime, comes crashing down, completely lifeless. At that moment, the mysterious saintess appears, wielding a powerful golden energy. The mysterious figure creates an energy barrier, shielding the group from the impact of the massive fall. With the troll's body now on the ground, a huge shockwave sweeps across the entire battlefield. When the dust finally settles, the monster's giant head is lying motionless on the ground. In the distance, the group of adventurers stares at the carcass of the creature that was just obliterated. But all of a sudden, the troll's teeth start to move, as if something is trying to crawl out of its mouth. Spooked by the chompers moving on their own, the group quickly gets ready for another fight. The creature's carcass starts gushing even more blood, making a huge mess of the area. Just then, a blood-soaked hand slowly emerges from inside the troll's mouth. Drenched in blood, our protagonist pulls himself up from inside the creature. With a cold gaze, he asks about the 3 helpers that Mirovec mentioned in her letter. The blonde hero replies that they are all comrades against the Demon Emperor. But our MC says that drawing a clear line between them is better for everyone involved. Our boy leaps in front of them, radiating a powerful aura. After walking past Blondie, he says that feelings that run too deep can become a burden or a hidden danger. Then, our protagonist faces off with the team's tank. The giant knight completely disagrees with Glan's way of thinking. Our hero then replies that he couldn't care less about his opinion. With that said, he simply turns and walks away. The blonde guy then asks the big fella to forgive him, explaining that the kid has a difficult personality. But the knight says it's all good, since he has no intention of being friends with that guy either. Elsewhere, the purple-haired demon sees someone and asks, "Is that really you?" Turns out she's staring at our hero, who's looking a lot cleaner now. Our protagonist confirms it with a simple yes and a slight smile on his face. The demon girl gets super happy and hugs him tightly, shouting that he's alive too. Overcome with emotion, she leaps into his arms and holds on for dear life. Our boy then asks why she's crying, saying she wasn't like this before. She says she never thought she'd be able to see a comrade again. Glenn gets a sad look on his face and apologizes, saying if only he had done better. Just then, 2 demons appear at the door and ask what's going on. The 2 monsters see their general on top of our hero. She tells the 2 to get out and says she's going to rest to get her strength back, so they just obey. The 2 leave, looking pretty suspicious. With them gone, our protagonist uses a healing spell on her. She asks if he's been feeling guilty all this time for what happened in the past. The demon girl cuts him off, saying she always found it annoying how he blames himself for everything. She cries out in pain, and he tells her to hang in there, since she broke more of his bones than he broke of hers. After that, the 2 sit down to eat some fruit and talk a bit more. He confirms that he was reincarnated as a demon 2 years ago and also found his sister. Our protagonist is shocked and asks if his old comrade, switched teams. He insists, asking how his friend became a woman from the demon race. The demon girl just stares at him with a serious expression, not saying a single word. With a smirk, she finally reveals that actually, she's been a woman the whole time. Glan is left completely speechless by this revelation and can't believe what he just heard. He's still reeling from the information, staring at his old companion in total confusion. She then asks if, in the 3 years they knew each other, he really thought she was a guy. A memory shows his friend with the giant armored knight. Our protagonist is stunned and remembers once arguing with Mirevech. Our hero then asks if everyone else already knew about this. She confirms that yes, every single one of their other companions knew. Outraged, he asks why she never told him the truth, but she flips the question back on him, saying she just assumed he already knew. Glan asks her to confirm this isn't some kind of joke, and she brings up how he used to call her Gigi. He explains that he thought it was some kind of military title. Mirevech sees Sula sleeping and asks who she is. Glan says she's Alexius's granddaughter. She then turns and notices some small wooden figures on top of a barrel. She starts counting the figurines and realizes that one of them is missing from the group. She also spots a few things on the floor. She then picks up the objects from the floor. Our protagonist replies that they're to remind him to be better in the future. With a determined look, our boy vows that he will eradicate evil and protect everyone. But his companion just starts laughing, finding his promise pretty hilarious. She doubts he can pull all of that off by himself, with no help from anyone. But then she says that when it comes to taking out the bad guys, he can count on her help. With that, the two seal their partnership with a firm handshake. This gesture shows that they're back together again, ready to face whatever comes their way. A moment later, the figures on the barrel are complete, symbolizing the old group. The 5 wooden figurines represent the old group of heroes, finally reunited. Sitting on a cliff, they talk about the last 2 years and what's been happening. They talk about the kingdom, and she says the current demon king couldn't care less about anything. The demoness mentions that sometimes her monster instincts try to take over. Our protagonist agrees, saying that his demonic nature has changed him a bit too. This gets his companion curious, and she asks how he feels different. Glenn explains that his personality has become calmer, and he has fewer ideas for battle strategies. This answer leaves Mirevech completely baffled, making a pretty funny face. Sula shows up and asks Glan who the lady is. Mirevech is charmed by the girl's cuteness, and pinches her cheeks affectionately. Our hero introduces the girl as Sula, and the woman complains about her plain clothes. She then invites the two of them to her basement, which is a much safer place. The group then walks through a stone hallway towards the secret hideout. Once there, Glan is impressed by the amount of information she's managed to gather. He looks at a board with a list of the demon kings who are their targets. Suddenly, Sula turns around and asks not to be treated like a doll. Turns out little Sula is in a brand new outfit and asks if it looks good. The demoness boasts about her skills, and our hero compliments the style of the clothes. Little Sula keeps looking at herself in the mirror, seeming to really like the new look. Her friend then says that a hair accessory would make the look perfect. Suddenly, our protagonist gets an idea when he sees an item she tossed aside. Picks up a large blue shell. Our hero recognizes the object as the soul sees call and gets serious. Mirevech says she won the shell, but he reveals it's a 300-year-old artifact. This artifact allows a person to enter another's soul and see their memories. Our protagonist remembers feeling something strange right before he was reincarnated. He asks her to use the item to enter his soul and find out the truth. The demoness accepts his request without hesitation and agrees to help him. With a determined look, she says she's ready to start whenever he is. Our hero then says that for the item to work, they need the other half. His friend panics when she remembers that the other part of the shell is missing. She explains that a gang of bandits stole the other half of the artifact. Our hero asks why she didn't just get the item back, and she says she's terrible at tracking. Glan complains that even after all these years, she hasn't gotten any better at stealth techniques. He says her attempts at being sneaky are so bad that a blind man could spot her. The lady cries and promises to practice in the future, but our boy yells at her to do it now. Elsewhere, we see the bandits' camp, where they have the stolen artifact. The thieves are gathered around a campfire, talking about the various supplies they've received. Inside a tent, the gang's leader is talking with a woman about his future plans. The big boss reveals he wants to get strong enough to fight an evil dragon. Outside, a few members are carrying 2 heavy boxes, which are tributes from another group. Turns out, our heroes use the boxes to sneak into the camp without being seen. From inside their hiding spot, Mirevech compliments the plan, and our protagonist tells her to stop with the metaphors. They comment on the infiltration, saying there are too many bandits for a direct attack. One of them worries that someone might run off with their half of the shell in the middle of the chaos. They decide it's better to observe first and figure out where everything is hidden. A beefy bandit sits on the very box our protagonist is in. The beefy bandit suggests they wait for their enemies to wear each other out before they swoop in and attack. But suddenly, the box he was sitting on completely breaks, sending the bandit to the ground. Sprawled on the ground, the man complains about the shoddy box, and his friend notices it was empty. So, to avoid being discovered, our hero quickly transforms into a snake. Tucked away inside a box snake, our hero and his pal are keeping an eye on the enemy's movements. They scope out the entire bandit camp, including the busted up box he was in. Meanwhile, the head thief is chatting with some lady, saying he's off to the black market to trade some items. But the elf chimes in, saying the market got wrecked by someone super strong, just as our guy closes in. When the bandit chief senses a strange presence and yells out, "Who's there?" And just like that, our guy appears, announcing that the target is confirmed and his friend can go have her fun. Right on cue, Mirov leaps out of the box and lays into one of the henchmen with a solid punch. She grabs him by the neck, totally cheesed off that they nabbed all the good snacks and left her hangry. Fueled by rage, she then unleashes a devastating blow on the monster without a shred of mercy. After knocking down a few enemies, she just stands there as more goons circle her, ready for a fight. The gang leader is absolutely furious, blaming our hero for leading Mirov right to their doorstep. The chief hands the artifact over to the woman. In a panic, he makes a run for our hero, using the girl as a flimsy excuse and yelling for help. But before he can get very far, a swift and precise strike takes him out mid-stride. The elf then reveals herself, saying she was sick and tired of that guy anyway, calling him a real piece of work. With a serious gaze, our hero faces off against the elf, who taunts him, asking if he wants the artifact. She keeps the trash talk going, saying that if he takes the item, she'll turn him into her new plaything. Not even hesitating, our guy darts forward with incredible speed and snatches the object right out of her hand. The other goons are completely floored, in disbelief that their boss was taken down so easily. Meanwhile, Mirov is busy fighting other bandits, and our guy starts critiquing her fighting style. He explains that her power can basically blend offense and defense into one move. So, he offers to share a few techniques, and an energy serpent materializes in his hand. The serpent then bites his friend's shoulder, and he tells her not to resist, but to feel the power. He says that by following its circulation, she'll discover a new way to operate her talent seal. Our hero says he'll show her one time, and a green and yellow aura envelopes her body. She then unleashes a powerful attack that completely wipes out all the enemies around her in one go. With her new shield and spear, she remarks that the feeling of learning something new isn't half bad. Our hero then grabs the artifact and says it's time for them to head back to the hideout. Back at the hideout, we see little Sula sleeping soundly at a table loaded with food. He mentions that the item is delicate and can only be used one time to see what happened in the past. Mirov gives him a worried look, but he reassures her, telling her not to sweat it. Then, with the artifact in hand, our hero tells her to brace herself as the object begins to glow intensely. An enormous serpent of dark energy is released from the artifact, lunging toward her. Next thing you know, he appears alone amidst a thick smoke, inside his own soul. Our guy then warns her with a smirk not to peek at things she's not supposed to see. Just then, his friend enters his soul space and wonders what it is she isn't supposed to see in there. All of a sudden, a giant, twisted statue emerges from the darkness, scaring the daylights out of her. She then realizes it's a statue of the god of mercy and thinks its appearance is seriously messed up. His friend is stunned to see the shape of his soul, and he explains that this place is his soul. A chaotic and cosmic vision of the past then unfolds before Mirov's eyes. Our hero's soul form then points toward the vision and tells his companion to go on ahead. With that, she walks toward a red light, ready to find out the truth. She soon sees the memory of a knight being struck by a powerful golden blow. The woman then realizes that this is one of his memories from after she had passed on. Surrounded by a dark, red energy, he remembers being cornered by the enemy. Inside the MC's memory, Mirov watches everything unfold with a serious and concerned expression. The evil being then reveals that he'll use a backup plan, relying on someone else's authority to survive. His cruel plan was to use a possession technique to reincarnate his soul into the body of a demon. But the blue symbol shatters, and the evil being complains that the form wasn't complete yet. Then we see a clash of energies, indicating that someone interrupted the demon emperor's ritual. His friend then finds herself in a sea of blood, observing the body of a woman named Savka, an old comrade. A close-up shows her body. She sacrificed herself to stop the ritual. A fire entity says that the possession was stopped, but the consequences are unknown. Then, a wicked smile appears in the darkness, revealing that the plan allowed him to stay alive after all. With a shocked expression, his friend realizes that the demon emperor also managed to reincarnate. With that, the memory ends and the scene shatters like a mirror, sending her falling into darkness. She appears in a gruesome place and realizes she's still in his soul and has to warn him, and fast. Morav then finds herself in a freaky place, littered with bones and ropes everywhere. Just then, a voice calls out to her, telling her to come this way, and she asks if it's her friend. The silhouette of a young man appears in the distance, confirming that it's really him speaking to her. However, our hero's real voice warns her not to listen to that thing, because it's not him. This leaves Morav totally confused, with no clue what's going on in this place. A giant, shadowy creature appears, revealing the true nature of his soul. The monster lunges forward with its giant maw to devour her, but she doesn't even flinch. She then defends herself with a powerful punch that shatters the creature's attack. At that moment, our hero's spiritual form appears and yells for her to get out of there, fast. He then uses his power to kick his friend's soul right out of his body. Back in the real world, his companion is exhausted and asks what the heck that thing was. Our MC says he'll explain later and asks if she found out anything important. She reveals that the Emperor's ability was to assimilate whoever took him out, and his power was passed on to someone else. Hearing this, our guy gets furious and slams his fist on the table with all his might. A dark aura then covers his body as he thinks about his old enemy. Morav says they need to find the reincarnated emperor before he becomes a total disaster again. She then shows a diagram explaining the complicated lineage and power structure of the demons. Our MC then says there's one more thing he needs to know and looks her straight in the eye. Serious gaze, he asks where their old companion, a woman named Suvka, is. Morav gets flustered and says the situation was urgent, and she didn't notice anything. She then turns to little Sula and calls her to prepare dinner, trying to change the subject. But our guy stops her, saying there's no need to change the subject right now. He insists with a firm look, asking her to just tell him the truth. With a sad expression, his companion seems unwilling to talk about what happened. She then laments, saying she doesn't know how she's supposed to tell him this story now. A memory then surfaces, showing two of their old companions returning from a fishing trip. The two saw our hero sitting by a campfire with Suvka. Morav, in her armor, tells her friends not to go over there yet, and they ask why. Morav says the other guy is married and just can't read the room, and the blonde guy jokes about his divorce. By the fire, Suvka asks our hero why the number on his left eye disappeared. Our hero explains to Suvka that when he takes the life of someone he doesn't want to, a number appears on his face. He continues, saying the mark only vanishes when he feels happy again, and she watches him intently. A memory of Suvka's shows the blonde guy saying she must feel right at home after reuniting with Mirovech. Suvka comments that Morav is blunt but thoughtful, and that they became friends quickly. She also praises the archer, saying the girl is cute and brings happiness to the group. She turns to our hero with a look full of meaning and admiration. He meets her gaze, and Suvka says that he is the reason for her happiness in that moment. Back in the present, Morav finally reveals that Suvka met a different fate than they did. With a cold look, our guy says that's fine, because it's just another blood debt. Then he turns to the Demon Emperor's diagram, determined to settle things. With his demonic hand, he stretches his fingers toward the drawing of his great enemy. He then crushes the paper in anger, vowing that this debt will be paid with a lot of blood. Meanwhile, in a village on the frontier, we see a scene of destruction and demons fighting. A centaur demon brags about his training philosophy, saying that carrying a heavy burden is the only way to build real strength. In the midst of the chaos, we see a man and a girl tied up on the ground, struggling to survive. The little girl cries desperately in her father's arms, and he tries to calm her, telling her not to be afraid. But the centaur demon just smiles sadistically as he pulls the rope even tighter. With that, the father and daughter are dragged by the rope, screaming in despair. Suddenly, the little girl says that human suffering was the first thing she ever saw. The man stares at her with eyes wide with pure terror and surprise. Unexpectedly, the centaur demon is violently yanked backward by the very rope he was using. The creature gets totally furious, having no idea what on earth is happening. Then we see that it's the girl who's holding the rope with incredible strength. The centaur and his lackeys stare at her, confused and seriously annoyed by the sudden interruption. She then turns to the man and says she blames herself for waking up too late and letting him suffer. Then she says that to apologize, she'll give him a quick end, and brutally takes him out. With glowing red eyes, she introduces herself as the last dictator, the Demon Emperor Semiralis. So, we see little Sokka surrounded by a whole bunch of bizarre demons. Little Sokka is confused and asks why her creations have become so cruel. She says their mission was to put an end to corrupt lives, not to revel in their pain. She's heartbroken that they take pleasure in it, and that this whole thing was just a terrible mistake. In a single move, she turns all the enemies to dust. When the dust settles, the little girl is all alone in the middle of the battlefield. She mentions that Glan is someone she'll never forget. She reveals that when she assimilated him during the battle, she was able to see deep into his soul. At that moment, the entity laments that he couldn't get to know her heart as well. She concludes that if he had just understood her, they could have been friends. A knight rushes in, blaming herself for being too late. With a sword in hand, the woman is in shock at the scene before her. Little Sokka then turns to face the warrior. Mirovech slowly approaches, calling the little girl child, with her voice breaking. In tears, Mirovech hugs Sokka and apologizes, saying, "Mommy took too long to get here." She keeps crying and apologizing while holding little Sokka. At this, Sokka says that people's suffering seems to have no end. Mirovech's eyes go wide. With a smile, little Sokka uses her own mother's sword to end her own life. She then collapses while her mother is completely frozen in disbelief. Lying on the ground, little Sokka takes her last breath. Unable to believe what just happened, her mother uses a strange ability. In her mind, strange voices begin to echo as she stands there, completely paralyzed. Elsewhere, Shu says there are no clues about where the Demon Emperor has been reincarnated. That's when our MC suggests that maybe Fenling could give them a lead on the matter. He explains that Fenling can tell truth from lies and isn't a fan of the demon race. So, Shu agrees that the Silent Death Demon King is their only hope for now. But our boy wonders if they can really trust another demon and remembers his objective. Their real plan is to wipe out every single demon until the entire race is annihilated. Fenling calls out our MC for being lost in thought. Our MC says it's nothing, he was just spacing out for a second. He leads his companions to a clearing and says this spot is perfect for what he has planned. Glan then reveals he's going to summon a vampire knight to pass the information along to the humans. The demon girl is shocked, saying that vampires are just legends, but she's heard tales of their power. That said, our hero uses his own blood to begin the summoning ritual. Huge red magic circle forms on the ground. 2 hours go by, and our MC figures he's probably just taking his sweet time since he hasn't been summoned in years. His partner says she's getting drained and decides to catch some Z's. The summoning circle keeps glowing on the ground, awaiting the creature's arrival. The scared little girl asks if vampires with bat wings are real, just like in the stories. Suddenly, a strong wind starts blowing through the forest, frightening the little girl. Her eyes go wide with pure terror. She spots a bat in the distance and breathes a sigh of relief, thinking it was just her imagination. But then, out of nowhere, something gigantic appears in front of her, covered in blood. The little girl lets out a scream of pure terror at the bizarre creature that just appeared. On the ground, the terrified girl desperately cries out for her uncle. The bizarre creature is a vampire knight in black armor, covered in blood. Our MC then shows up and says he didn't summon this guy just to scare everyone. With a powerful aura, our hero tells the boogeyman to start taking things seriously. The surprised vampire knight notes that the person who could use this summoning array to call him passed away a long time ago. Bleeding and wielding his blood sword, he demands to know how Glan learned the ritual. Glan gets the vibe that this vampire knight isn't exactly the friendly type. The creature threatens Glan, saying he hopes for a voluntary confession, otherwise, he'll have to get it by force. Our hero isn't fazed at all and even throws some shade, saying the enemy's rhetorical question is a good one. He adds that other than that, nothing else about him is decent, and that the monster is a huge letdown. Is completely floored by Glan's audacity. Our boy projects his aura onto the vampire knight, leaving him stunned. The creature seems to recognize that voice and starts to panic, wondering if it could really be him. With his helmet off, he's revealed to be a young man with white hair, and he calls out to Professor Jilong. We're shown a castle that looks like some kind of school academy. We see the vampire knight's memories of being mistreated by others, begging them not to burn his hand. The bully is Mulder Lawrence, an 18-year-old hare who asks why he shouldn't hurt him. Crying, the boy replies that his mother would see the burn and worry about him. Mulder then remarks that unlike his family, normal mothers actually care about their children. Mulder ignores the boy's tears and asks what that has to do with him as he burns the poor kid's hand. Then, with a wicked smile, he says it's now the other hand's turn to get a little roughed up. And just as he's about to strike the young man's other hand, a mysterious man appears and grabs Mulder's wrist, stopping the cruel act. Our hero warns that next time, he'll be calling the bully's parents to handle the situation. Mulder gets ticked off and calls Glan an honorary professor, who doesn't even have a real job. In response, Glan simply yeets the bully and his friends out the window without a second thought. He just stands there, looking like a total badass, while the white-haired boy admires him and heals his injured arm. Seeing our protagonist walk away, the young vampire tries to call him back, asking him to wait. Even with everyone around them staring, our hero just keeps walking, ignoring the call. The boy's hand reaches out for Glan, who is already starting to disappear from view. Unable to catch up, he just lowers his hand and quietly thanks him for the help. Another student mentions that the lecture hall is packed, with at least 1,000 students inside. His friend explains that the professor is a demon, hunting maniac who rarely has any free time. That's why everyone who dreams of becoming a hero would do anything to attend one of his lectures. The two of them peek through the window and note that even several princes came for the special class. They list off the nobles, but one of them was kicked out by Professor Glan for forcing others to give up their seats. Meanwhile, the young vampire walks around, bummed out and wondering how he could possibly thank his savior. Out of nowhere, some green vines shoot out and trap the boy, scaring him. Mulder and his goons show up, and the villain says that no one will hear his screams for help out here. Even hanging upside down and all tied up, the kid isn't intimidated and tells the bully off. With a wicked grin, Mulder says he didn't expect the young man to be so tough. He then starts crushing the boy's body while his friends are already planning where to hide the evidence. The young vampire thinks about the danger Glan is in and decides he has to stop them no matter what. He tries to use his talent seal to escape, but realizes he doesn't really know how to use it properly. Feeling his whole body ache and running out of air, he wonders if this is the end, but our hero shows up in the nick of time. Our protagonist catches him and frees him from the thorns, commenting that the kid is pretty tough. Relieved, the young man warns him that the Lawrence family wants to hurt him and asks where the bullies are. With a calm look, our hero just points up and says, "They're on their way down." And then we see the three bullies falling from the sky at high speed, looking like Team Rocket blasting off again. The three of them go splat on the ground with a massive impact, kicking up a cloud of dust and debris. Completely shocked and covered in red, the young vampire hears Glans say that their parents are going to have a hard time picking up the pieces. Our hero invites him to the lecture, saying his talent seal has potential. The young man says he's scared, so Glan advises him to use that fear as a nightmare for his enemies. Running after his savior, the boy says he doesn't know how to thank him, and our protagonist replies, "That sounds like a you problem." Excited, the young vampire says his mom is making a pie and asks what kind of fruit Glan likes. He replies that he prefers wild strawberries. Elsewhere, a man asks Velan if he understands the situation, and he confirms that the key is two people who demons cannot possess. The little Sula curiously asks Morovich who they're talking about. She reveals they are Emperor Oya and Rainstorm Yua, the two great walls of humanity. We are shown the silhouettes of Hoya, the king of Ainia, and Yuha, the leader of the Northern Alliance. Velan remembers that Yuha has retired and will be hard to contact, and the other man laments this, as Yuha was the only one to ever defeat him. Glan then tells Velan to get going, because every second they waste gives the Demon Emperor another chance. Velan agrees to the mission as his enormous blood wings spread out impressively, and with a powerful thrust, he soars through the night skies. The child waves goodbye, calling him Brother Mosquito. Glan then says they can now hunt for the Demon Emperor's reincarnation. The next day, Glan announces he's going to find work for the departments, saying the journey to find the Demon King is no short trip. And since they can't just annihilate the Demon Emperor, he plans to tear him limb from limb and stuff him in a ceramic jar. He makes a point of wanting to keep him alive with healing spells, forcing him to live like a worm, a lovely task that will be passed down through generations. Elsewhere, the cavalry commander, Slaxing, is chatting with his buddy about some guy who challenged the boss of the Bone Crushers. Slaxing brags that if he had the chance, he'd totally take the boss's throne, but his pal warns him that the challenger in question is heading their way. Faced with the situation, a group of demons stares down our protagonist, who approaches slowly, without a shred of fear. The commander recognizes him and thinks to himself that this is not someone you should mess with or underestimate. Immediately, the muscle-bound demon is terrified and considers begging for mercy as Glan's hand reaches out. The demon's eyes go wide with panic, but the commander is just straight up ignored. Glan was just heading for the horses. Then a monster announces the arrival of Lord Desert Fang as our hero walks away with the animals. This so-called Desert Fang is the second in command, and he informs everyone that their leader will be away for a while. He orders everyone to prepare supplies for a surprise farewell ceremony for the departing boss. Our protagonist watches from a distance, thinking that this suck-up could expose his movements and become a real problem. Slaxing calls the second in command a coward, but his friend reminds him that Desert Fang has the full support of their boss. Desert Fang turns to Slaxing and demotes him to messenger, forbidding him from using weapons, and Slaxing accepts the order without a single complaint. Glan thinks Fea was smart. This kind of pest is useful to humans, and keeping him alive is better than getting rid of him. Our hero comments that all this fuss goes against the boss's policy of being frugal. As Glan passes judgment, the demon spits in his face for having the audacity to try and teach him how to do his job. Desert Fang gets furious and asks if our young man isn't going to kneel and bow to him to be spared. With an irritated look, our protagonist glares at the demon, who tells him to get on his knees if he wants to be forgiven for his actions. But Desert Fang interrupts him, saying the ground is too hard and he might end up hurting his head. Because of this, he orders a servant to bring a pile of manure so the guy can kneel more comfortably. With an evil grin, Desert Fang orders our hero to kneel in the pile of filth right now. In the background, Slaxing and other demons watch the scene with malicious smirks, eager to see what happens next. Our protagonist finds this whole thing a major pain, and Desert Fang threatens him, saying he'll tell the boss everything. He goes on, saying the boss is terrifying and could finish the guy off with just a single roar of fury. The demon thinks that if he teaches him a lesson, he might go too far, and Desert Fang asks if he's scared. At that, the demon grabs his neck and shoves him hard toward the mirror, yelling at him to kneel. However, our protagonist is faster, and with a swift move, he sweeps the leg of the rat-faced guy. Desert Fang face plants right into the manure, causing the other demons to burst out laughing. Faced guy is furious, unable to believe he just landed face first in the crap. But then, before he can retaliate, Morovich arrives with her imposing presence, stealing everyone's attention and questioning what he's doing. Sucking up to Moravich, the rat-faced guy complains that Glan disobeyed his orders and demands he be punished. The furious Desert Fang asks if Glan will dare to disobey his order again. But suddenly, Moravich attacks the rat-faced guy, stabbing him right through the leg. On his knees, Desert Fang has no idea what just happened. Moravich stands behind him, her aura leaving him completely terrified as she shouts for them to bring more manure. Moravich orders that from now on the rat-faced guy will have to kneel every time he sees Glan. In the background, Slaxing and the other demons watch, shocked by Moravich's cruelty. The rat-faced guy looks completely dumbfounded, with no clue who he just messed with. The boss is terrifying and could end the guy with a single roar, so he wonders why she's treating him so well. Put Sula on top of a horse so they can leave. Pull on their reins. They ride off to see one of the 5 great demon kings. That night, we see the capital of the Eternal Royal Court, a floating city called New White Road City. In a castle, someone watches the moon, satisfied with the first step of the demon race's reformation. This figure says that now even the lowest demon has options, and he hopes to move on to the next stage. In a meeting, a demon suggests that everyone should worship the late emperor, and the agricultural demon king supports the idea. The cruel demon king Udrad speaks up, saying he has no objection to the proposal. Then, the desolate demon king Manhattan tells Shu he doesn't need to ask for his opinion, as he already has his son's support. The silent death demon king Penling looks bored and asks why she was even invited to the meeting. Seated on his throne, the eternal demon king Shu says he understands her position and won't force her into anything. He believes that one day she will understand that his goal is not to annihilate humanity, as everyone thinks. Shu reveals with a serious look that his true objective is nothing less than the process of reforming the world. The silent death demon king Penling excuses herself and simply decides to leave the meeting of the kings. Shu doesn't seem to mind her departure and tells the others to continue with their important conversation. We return to Glan's horse, which continues to gallop across the arid fields. They ride through the royal court's no man's land, a desolate place full of rocky mountains. Atop the animals are our protagonist and his companion, moving quickly through the territory. Meanwhile, the vampire knight villain flies nonstop to warn humanity about the Emperor's reincarnation. After days of flying without rest, Velen finally reaches his destination, the capital of the Kingdom of Ainia. A man greets him and tells him not to worry about formalities, as the king is already waiting for his report. From there, Velen walks to the throne room, thinking about the reputation of the fearsome Emperor Hoya. Upon arriving, he is greeted by the Emperor himself, who asks if he is the vampire knight, Velen. Emperor Hoya praises the young man and regrets not having been present for his knighting ceremony. With a friendly gesture, the monarch invites him to sit and eat with him, since he arrived at mealtime. A chancellor comments that despite the king's casual style, he treats his subordinates well, and Hoya orders this to be recorded. And so, a scribe jots down the praise in the Book of the White King, which records the good deeds of Ainia's kings. Because of this, Hoya jokes with the chancellor, and Velen realizes the emperor is different from what he had imagined. Velen begins his report to Hoya about the demon emperor, while the king serves him a meal. The monarch responds casually and asks the knight to tell him everything while they eat together. After hearing everything, Hoya concludes that he and Rainstorm Yuho must avoid confrontation so they don't get assimilated. He then explains that Yuha used retirement as an excuse and went to train on an island almost 4 years ago. Therefore, the Emperor guarantees he will send a secret agent to deliver this information to the hero. At that moment, a guard announces the return of the agent from demon territory, and Velen offers to leave. But Hoya stops him and decides to personally escort him to the guest room, as it would be a hassle to call for someone. As they walk, the knight asks about the agent, and the king says that for this mission, a human was more suitable. Just then, the royal spy Lemmersdorf, a massive demon, appears and says his mission was a success. The spy is shocked to see Velen and questions what a vampire knight would be doing in the castle. Faced with the situation, Hoya realizes the two haven't met yet and decides to make the introductions. The king introduces his spy, Lemmersdorf, and also the vampire knight Velen, who is a vassal of the 8th prince. Velen is visibly suspicious upon seeing that a member of the demon race is serving the king of humans. Lemmersdorf informs him that the king needs to attend to military matters and has sent him to take Velen to get some rest. Velen can't hold back and questions him, but Lemmersdorf says it's just a job, and the knight calls him a traitor to his race. Lemmersdorf replies that in this chaotic era, the weak must find a protector and make money to survive. He then holds up 2 gold bars and asks if Velen knows which one is demon and which one is human. The spy asserts that the war between the 2 races is not his problem and that everyone should look out for themselves. His only plan is to save up enough cash to get out of this place and go enjoy life on another continent. Velen smiles, finding it ironic that in the midst of so many killing machines, such a selfish villain has appeared. The demon accepts the insult, saying that at least he's honest about his earnings and not a hypocrite. He then mentions Velen's master, named Jelong, and the knight tells him to get to the point. Lemmersdorf questions whether Jelong was truly noble, or if his desires just happened to align with the ideal of peace. With a malicious look, he suggests that the great hero might have been hiding some pretty dark secrets in his heart. The moment he says that Zilong was fooling himself, Valen summons several red swords and threatens him. With his eyes glowing in different colors, the knight warns him to think very carefully before he speaks again. The spy calms down, saying it's just a hypothesis and that he didn't mean to offend the young man's late master. He just wants to imagine what Zilong would do if he had to choose between the greater good and a selfish desire. We return to the no man's land where our protagonist and his companion are resting at an oasis. Glan calculates it will take another half a month to reach the royal court, and the young woman is relieved they haven't run into any bandits. Moravich warns Sula not to let her guard down, and our protagonist asks her if she has a talent seal. Sula replies with a smile that the only thing she knows is that her forging speed is faster than her grandfather's. Our hero says she might be using her power without realizing it and decides to teach her the basics of controlling her gift. With that, he begins the lesson, explaining that the heart of someone with a talent seal generates power constantly. There are 4 basic applications: mobilization, amplification, release, and shaping. He gives her some pretty interesting lessons. Our protagonist gives an example, saying that mobilizing power to the eyes allows one to see farther and even have heat vision. He also recalls that Faya used amplification to resist his thunder and shaping to create a protective membrane. Glan explains that he used shaping and release to create an energy serpent and attack his opponent. He then tells Sula to try mobilization by concentrating the power in her hand, and the girl obeys with a shout. Sula can feel the energy flowing into her hands, and Glan praises her, telling her to grab her hammer now. Sula swings the tool with ease and notices that it really is much lighter than before she used her power. Our hero informs her that it's possible to imbue objects with her power, but the effect wears off over time. He adds that weapons made of Anxi steel are one of the few exceptions to this rule of wear and tear. Given the situation, he decides to focus her training on defense, as keeping her alive is the priority, and tells her to strengthen her hand. Our protagonist warns that he's going to attack, and tells Sula to get ready to block the incoming blow. To scare her, Glan says he'll heal her hand if it breaks, and the young woman is terrified by the possibility. Glan then throws a quick punch, and Sula raises her strengthened fist to try and defend herself. Upon impact, the young woman's fist manages to stop the attack, generating a large shockwave in the area. After the collision, smoke rises from Sula's hand, and she's surprised she could withstand the force of the hit. Suddenly, some golden figures appear on her hand, revealing themselves to be the manifestation of her power. Sula looks on in awe, and Glan comments that potential always shows up in the most critical moments of life. Little Sula asks our hero what to do next, showing some glowing figures in her hand. Our protagonist then explains that she needs to remember how to use this type of talent seal. At that, the little blonde girl tries to release and shape her power, and the small golden figures begin to float. Moravich watches intently as the tiny creatures of light land on her large metal gauntlet. The purple-haired woman says that now Sula must use her imagination to give shape to the seal's power. Excited by the idea, the little girl uses her power to create tiny archers on a miniature castle. Moravich then says that this is just the basics, and that from now on, she needs to train and learn about the world. She also mentions that with Sula's forging ability, awakening a seal was only a matter of time. Our hero explains that you can awaken an acquired seal by reaching perfection in a certain field, but it's rare. Suddenly, the little golden creatures get spooked by something in the distance, reacting to an imminent danger. Glan notices the commotion and orders them to put out the fire, as something has scared off the wild birds nearby. We see a flock of birds flying away from a desert canyon in a total panic. Shortly after, a group of people with wolf ears appears, and one of them calls their leader, Knight Captain. The guy explains that the princess is injured, and that they lack the combat power to face demons there. Watching from a cliff, Moravich wonders which wealthy family would dare bring people into this no man's land. Our hero recognizes the girl as the 9th princess of Anya, and says she is the most ambitious of them all. Moravich teases him about knowing of her ambition, but Glan says she was the one who spilled all the details about the nobility. Meanwhile, one of the wolf men kicks his companion, blaming the two of them for the failure of their mission. The guy complains that his family spent a ton of cash for him to get into the royal guard and get close to the princess. Then he wonders how it all went so wrong and why they ended up in this awful, desolate place. Just then, a black snake approaches a bag on the ground as a voice asks what they're looking for. Our protagonist and Moravich observe the scene, and she seems a little sad about the group's situation. He then asks if she wants to use that arm to evolve, and the purple-haired woman confirms right away. With that, our hero lies down on the ground, and is covered by several snakes as he prepares to use his power. The wolf man feels guilty and drags the princess and the other scout, calling himself useless. But the scout yells at him, saying it's not his fault because the arm contained vital information. The two continue to argue angrily, each blaming the other for the situation they were now in. Suddenly, a strange, shadowy hand appears and snatches the bag, leaving the two completely shocked and speechless. Our boy walks away with the bag, using 2 sticks as crutches, and the girl calls him captain. With a determined look, he says that a knight of Anya never gives up halfway and keeps moving forward. The group's leader shouts that there's a water source just ahead and tells the other to shut up when he doubts him. At that moment, the green-haired princess suddenly starts to feel very sick and coughs non-stop. One of the wolf men panics when he sees her condition and screams Her Highness's name in a total frenzy. The girl is lying on a makeshift stretcher and seems to be badly injured from their last battle. He then orders the scout to heal her, and the blue-haired girl tries to use her healing magic to save her. But with tears in her eyes, the girl explains that she used up all her power in the fight and hasn't recovered yet. Suddenly, a mysterious voice gets their attention, and the group goes on high alert as someone approaches. Just then, our protagonist and Moravich appear in the middle of the desert, walking slowly toward them. The wolf man shouts for everyone to be careful and shoots an arrow to defend against the demonic race. With that, our boy catches the arrow in mid-air and says they don't attack humans unless it's necessary. Then he displays his healing magic and says they just want to make a deal with their group there in the desert. Our hero proposes to heal the princess in exchange for information about the severed arm of that Jelong fellow. A bright green energy then envelopes our protagonist's hand as he prepares to use his power. The wolf man looks thoughtful for a moment but seems to have little choice but to accept the offer. With no other option, the group's leader finally agrees to the deal and tells our hero to heal the girl. Our hero uses his healing magic and thinks that the demon who injured the princess cannot be underestimated. Meanwhile, the green-haired girl continues to cough and appears to be in pretty bad shape. At this, the wolf man gets annoyed and grabs our protagonist, asking what he's doing to her. But Glan remains calm and simply tells the guy he's making a lot of unnecessary noise. He then stops the leader from moving and warns him not to rush, as he has only just been healed. Suddenly, the princess sits up fully recovered, and the scout shouts her name, surprised by the scene. The blue-haired girl is impressed and says that only a demon king would have healing power like that. The group's leader then chews out his companion and tells him to apologize to our hero. Fully recovered, the princess thanks them for their help and realizes they can communicate normally. With that, our protagonist says that now it's her turn, and the girl says she will pay what was promised. Glan then reveals that he wants the severed arm, and the princess gets a very serious expression on her face. Our boy says that's not possible and asks her own subordinate to tell the whole truth. The wolf man apologizes and explains that he can't say anything because it involves the affairs of humanity. He then says that in exchange for the healing, he can give our hero anything else he asks for. The princess realizes that during the treatment, our protagonist did something more to her body. Glan then reveals he placed a poison in her and demands to know about the arm, or the girl will perish right there. The princess says the toxin only made her a little weak, while her companion thinks it's just a bluff. She says she can remove the poison in 3 minutes, but our hero pressures him, asking how he'll explain her passing. Moravich says it's better to go down fighting than to surrender, and that they won't force them. But the other guy just ignores him and asks them to wait. The green-haired girl thinks to herself that she'll get her powers back soon, and that he's the one who should be anxious about what might happen. Hearing this, the purple-haired woman questions if our hero is sure, stating that Anya royalty doesn't have any cowards in its ranks. The man then screams in desperation, saying that Jelong's arm is in the hands of the great warlord named Jir. This demon was the right-hand man of the cruel demon king Barnir, but he became a common outlaw after his master was defeated. He then explains that the princess only wanted to recover the hero's remains to boost her people's morale. But to everyone's surprise, the villain had already fused the arm to his own body and injured the princess so they could escape. Back in the present, our MC asks where this so-called demon is, and the man replies that he's resting in the ruins. He then reveals that they're heading there too, but they don't stand a chance on their own, so he begs for our guy's help. Our protagonist then grabs the guy's arm, who is left completely clueless about what's going on. At that moment, Glan and his partner use an ability and vanish from the spot, leaving the man behind, absolutely furious. The princess then gets up, and the guy is stunned, but she explains that the poison was trivial and she recovered quickly. He then kneels, full of regret, and apologizes to Her Highness for trying to pull a fast one on the other two. Meanwhile, 2 other soldiers watch the scene, wondering if that doesn't count as disobeying orders. The princess then simply tells her soldier to rise, and he's quite surprised by her attitude at that moment. The princess says it wasn't his fault, as she hadn't explained herself properly, and there was no way for him to know what to do. She tells him not to worry because the demons are no match for the villain, and now they need to come up with a plan. But suddenly, one of the soldiers shouts in desperation, warning Her Highness that enemies are approaching. At that moment, a tattered flag flutters in the wind, signaling that a large force is heading their way. With that, the green-haired girl orders her companions to form an attack formation to defend themselves. An army of monsters appears on the horizon, and one of them says they found the 4 people that this Zir guy wanted. Says the big boss only wants the heads, so they can have the rest of the bodies to play with. The princess then asks her soldier to hold on until her power recovers so she can use her ability. One of the monsters says he'll tire the group out first, and his leader agrees, since they won't figure out their seal. Green Aura, the hooded monster, prepares to ask the small group of heroes a question. He then asks, where does a rooster that can speak the human language come from, if it was born from a regular egg? Time runs out, and the demon's ability activates, draining the energy from everyone who didn't answer the riddle. Everyone panics, and the girl complains that she doesn't want to bite the dust looking all ugly and wrinkly because of that power. The soldier with the crossbow wants to attack the main body, but the princess warns that the enemy is too fast for that. The monsters move at high speed, and one of them boasts that no one can touch them with his brother around. The demon leader orders all his forces to attack, while thinking about how he's going to get stronger. With that, a horde of bizarre monsters charges full throttle at the small, cornered group. The princess's soldiers are terrified as their life force is drained by the enemy's ability. But suddenly, a white and purple blur appears at high speed, taking everyone by surprise. In the blink of an eye, several demons are annihilated by a swift and dark energy attack. In the midst of the chaos, our protagonist appears in his transformed state, wrecking all the enemies. The princess watches the scene from afar, completely shocked by our hero's strength. Moravich then says that this is a gift for the new alliance they are forming. She proposes that they cooperate to get the hero's arm, but makes it clear that the item will be theirs in the end. Our guy continues his assault and annihilates the monster army with his overwhelming power. With this, our protagonist's talent seal advances to the 3rd level, increasing his power. Glan realizes his transformed state still has a lot of room for improvements and new powers. Seeing he has no chance, the enemy leader and his brother flee, creating a smokescreen of sand. The riddle demon then asks another question about 4 brothers to try and stop our guy. A countdown begins as our hero waits in the middle of the sandstorm. Our hero then answers that the 4th brother's name is Mo, leaving the enemy quite surprised. The monster then laughs and says the answer is wrong, because the brother's name was actually Tiger. Glan is unaffected by the riddle's power, and the green energy around him begins to shatter. He then activates his serpent bloodline's thermal vision to locate the enemy in the smoke. With his lightning thunder attack, our protagonist charges at high speed towards the monster. A blast of purple energy is fired and hits the riddled demon square in the face. Our guy then annihilates the monster and says that if he said it's Mo, then that's the answer. The princess's soldiers are terrified by so much power and wonder if they offended the guy. The demon leader is impressed and says it's fantastic to find a young man this good. He then activates his arm fortress and threatens to peel our hero's skin off for his collection. A giant sand castle rises from the ground, and the monster leader stands on top, watching. He promises that our guy will look very beautiful, and Glan stares up at the massive fortress from below. From atop the castle, the monster launches a huge sand projectile towards our protagonist. The attack hits the ground hard, causing an explosion that throws our hero far away. Glan then regroups with the rest of the party to face the fortress and its powerful enemy. One of the soldiers says they're screwed, and Moravich notices the city is moving towards them. With that, the sand fortress advances rapidly, firing multiple spikes at the group. On top of the castle, the monster leader summons his brothers to surround and annihilate the group. Then, 2 enormous sand monsters emerge from the earth ready to crush our heroes. The giants complain that the fight is boring and ask why they were summoned to deal with a bunch of ants. The princess gets annoyed at being called an ant, and a green aura begins to emanate from her. Her soldiers panic, and one of them asks if Her Highness's power is already sufficient. Our protagonist returns to his normal form, and Moravich says that now they can rest a bit. The princess then activates her talent seal and, with a new power, asks who the ant is now. In the blink of an eye, she dashes forward and lands a green energy punch on one of the sand giants. With her sword, she slices the monster in half in a devastating attack that surprises everyone. The purple-haired woman says that enemies can be weapons, and our guy agrees that it's convenient. The castle fires a shower of arrows, but the princess uses the projectiles to run through the air. She then rips off one of the monster's arms and hurls it with all her strength at the fortress. The arm smashes into the wall, causing an explosion that destroys part of the sand structure. The monster leader is trapped in the rubble of his fortress with a not-so-happy look on his face. He then looks up and his expression changes to one of pure panic and utter despair. A giant silhouette of the princess appears with an energy sword, ready for the final attack. The demon is completely paralyzed with fear, unable to believe what he's seeing. With a single devastating blow, the green-haired girl cuts the sand castle in half. The enormous fortress then crumbles, turning into a mountain of sand and dust in the desert. Our hero notices a movement towards the sunset and watches it intently. On the horizon, a large red dragon flies peacefully as the day ends. The princess stands alone in the rubble, but Glan and Moravich soon fly over to her. Moravich explains that it's an evil dragon, but our guy is relieved that it's leaving. With her green aura, the princess finally agrees to the alliance proposal they made. They agree to split the arm, but both are secretly planning to take the item for themselves in the end. Later that night, the group camps near a river to rest after the big battle. Moravich hands a bowl of soup to little Sula, who is eating by the campfire. Everyone then gathers around the fire to talk and recharge their energy. The princess then tells her soldier to keep an eye on the demons and says she's going to talk with our protagonist. At that, Moravich sees the girl approaching and asks our hero what the deal is with little Sula, who's with them. Meanwhile, the princess's soldiers complain about making a deal with demons to retrieve a hero's remains. One of them reveals that the knight was his idol because he fought in numerous battles and never got a single scratch. Suddenly, a hooded figure appears and asks another girl who was with the group for a piece of cheese. The girl gets scared and explains that her mother bought her that expensive cheese before she left home a long time ago. The soldier then turns around, gets the shock of his life, and asks who that person is and when they appeared out of nowhere. He then gets very suspicious of the situation and asks the figure if they happen to be some kind of demon. At that moment, the man removes his hood and with a smile on his face, confirms that he is indeed a demon. The soldier then looks towards our guy and shouts, asking if this new demon is a friend of their group. The princess watches the commotion, as do our protagonist and his companions, who see everything from a distance. With that, the blue-haired demon unsheathes his two swords, which begin to glow with a strong blue light. He then uses his flowing water sword technique and attacks the princess's soldiers with a super fast strike. The attack hits all three soldiers dead on, and they scream in pain, not understanding what just happened to them. Our protagonist and Moravich rush in, and the purple-haired woman recognizes the enemy and his ability. The man reveals his name is Moravich, and he possesses a dark aura with his two swords in hand. That the princess's three soldiers are left wounded on the ground, unable to move after the blow. Seeing her companions hurt, the green-haired girl gets angry and prepares for combat. The blue-haired demon then reveals he has come under his master's orders to capture the princess. On the ground, we see one of the soldier's hands and the cheese he was holding after the swift attack. The princess says this demon is very strong and asks for help from her new ally, our guy. At that moment, Glan intervenes and says there must be a misunderstanding and that they can negotiate. Our protagonist then comes face to face with the blue-haired demon and a tense atmosphere builds. Glan stares down his opponent with a serious, focused look, waiting for his next move. Moravich also stares back at our hero with a scar-filled smile on his face, showing no fear. He then says he was wondering who could have such a heavy killing intent like that. The villain then calls Glan Jilong and Moravich Feya, leaving the two girls quite surprised. The purple-haired woman thinks that the two guys have a connection stronger than blood brothers. Suddenly, Moravich charges forward and our protagonist warns his companions to be careful. Our hero realizes the attack was a feint to make them lower their guard, and a burst of purple energy explodes. Our hero then activates his eternal Night Dragon Soul talent and complains that he can never complete his missions in peace. Our MC faces a dragon-like creature and pretty much tells it to get lost so the real fight can continue. In response, Malovi gets ticked off, showing off his busted-up face and screaming that it's all our hero's fault. He's absolutely seething, screaming that his current look is all thanks to the guy standing right in front of him. That's when one of his allies, a girl named Faye, shows up and desperately tries to calm the guy down. Our MC just scoffs at the whole scene, which triggers Faye to charge right at him, shield at the ready. Malavi completely ignores her and just starts wailing on a bunch of enemies with his flowing water sword technique. Faye doesn't block in time and gets seriously messed up by some friendly fire from her own teammate. This, of course, makes her furious, and she screams that she's gonna snap the guy out of it the hard way. But Malovi just says he's been wide awake the whole time and pops one of his missed abilities. Using his new technique, he lands a massive hit on Faye that sends her flying. Our MC figures out the trick and tells Yvette that the enemy is using the mist for cover. So, without wasting a second, he activates his thermal vision to counter the guy. Right after, a huge fiery explosion rips through the middle of the battlefield. The water sword technique was combined with fire, and now it's got a bunch of enemies pinned to the ground. Our MC realizes his thermal vision is useless and wonders where the next attack is coming from. Then, one of the allies yells for Faye to use her new technique, creating a barrier of shields. Meanwhile, one of the injured guys is crying out in pain, unable to focus enough to use his healing magic. Just then, Malovi appears and attacks the guy on the ground, but he misses the finishing blow by a hair. He says he only messed up the kid's hands because he didn't want to take out an innocent unfairly. The golden shield barrier is now completely surrounded by a prison of fire and lightning. Malovi walks up to the group and asks with a smirk how they plan on getting out of this one. One of the knights gets ticked off and rips into him, but the blue-haired guy just gets a kick out of his courage. The man then screams that his opponent insulted the name of his idol, and for that, he's basically cursing him to heck and back. The antagonist questions the knight, asking if he knew his great idol was just the runner. He reveals that the title of First Knight belonged exclusively to the son of King Hoya. Right after he says that among demons, strength is the only thing that rules, fair and square. With that, he transforms into a dragon and declares that he'll be the new demon emperor soon enough. In his dragon form, he fires off an energy blast at the group of heroes. The blast smashes into the shield barrier, causing a gigantic explosion in the middle of the area. Our hero sees the dragon flying and tells Wayvet that if it reveals an opening, they have to move. The dragon then flies toward the fire barrier to unleash another powerful attack on the group. At that exact moment, Wayvet seizes the opportunity and launches a giant sword at the beast. From there, the materialized blade flies at incredible speed to hit its draconic target. But the creature dodges it with ease, saying the attack was nothing more than a cheap trick. With its eyes glowing intensely, the flying beast gets ready for its next move. On top of the giant sword, our MC is running, channeling his energy for a surprise attack. Full of power, our boy charges head on toward his huge and powerful adversary. The two finally meet in the air, preparing for a direct and decisive clash. Our hero activates his new technique, and an image of a red dragon is pierced by a bolt of lightning. The reflection shows the silhouette of the beast getting hit dead on by the guy's electric attack. An old man watches the fight from a distance, surprised that the dragon fell for such a trap. Immediately after, a massive purple lightning bolt tears across the night sky and slams violently into the ground. Moravich and her friend find the enemy's departure strange, and she reveals it was all staged. In another scene, Malovi glares at our hero with pure hatred, showing his completely wounded face. A blonde girl asks if it doesn't hurt, and the guy replies that it's worth it, no matter the pain. A blonde-haired guy says he needs to keep his scar to look imposing and majestic. The girl next to him asks why he doesn't just cut himself, and he says that would be meaningless. Looking at his reflection in the mirror, he declares that he wants the whole world to acknowledge him. But he also says with a satisfied smile that his own acknowledgement is what matters most. Suddenly, a hand appears and uses healing magic on his face, leaving him completely stunned. A man approaches and asks him why he didn't mention he was hurt after the battle. At that, the mirror shatters, and the blonde guy screams in despair because his precious scar is gone. In a flashback, Malovi says that the performance depends on our MC's skills in the fight. Is talking with a friend, saying that Malovi is just using the word master as an excuse. Elsewhere, an old man says that the evil dragon failed because of his bad intel. Malavi defends himself, saying the job was high risk because the opponent was extremely strong. He then asks the old man to tell his boss that he needs help capturing the princess. The guy demands 10 secret potions to be able to advance and break the 6th seal of power.